Good evening, and welcome to the public meeting of the Halton District School Board. It is Wednesday, June the 2nd, 2021. As per all of our board meetings, this meeting is being video voice recorded and is posted on the hdsb.ca website as well as on our YouTube channel. The HDSB celebrates Pride Month in June, and we are committed to providing a respectful environment where all students, staff, and community members feel welcome. To acknowledge June is 2SL LGBTQI plus Pride Month. The Pride flag will be raised at all HDSB schools and the board office during the month of June. At this time, I will take trustee roll call. Please answer as I call your name in alphabetical order by last name. Trustee Amos.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Collard.
Good evening.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you, I am here.
Vice Chair L. Harrison.
Hello.
Trustee Garretts.
Great to be here.
Trustee Gray.
Hello from the hills.
Trustee Oliver.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Reynolds.
Hello, everyone.
Trustee Rocha.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Shuttleworth.
Hi, everybody.
Trustee Taylor.
Good evening, everyone.
And Trustee Vidankara.
Hi, everyone.
Director Miller, could you please note the staff that are in attendance this evening?
Thank you, Chair of Events. All senior staff are here this evening, along with General Manager Tebow, and there's a couple of guests to help with one of the items, and I will leave that to General Manager Tebow to introduce them when they're doing their presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The board will now take a moment of silence in honor of the 215 children of the former Kamloops Residential School in British Columbia, and in respect of the Tecumloops Tsekwimua First Nation. Thank you. The flags at all Halton District School Board sites were lowered on May the 31st and will continue at half-mast until Tuesday, June the 8th for a total of 9 days, 1 hour for each of the graves of the children found. This evening, Trustee Oliver will be honoring the land.
Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Arawandaren, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions, land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest this evening? Looking to the speakers list. Seeing none, Next, we are up to the agenda. We have an adjustment to the agenda that 522 Board Committee's Governance Procedure Report 21080, submitted by Tanya Rocha, Margot Shuttleworth, and Trustee Amy Collard, they're all trustees, and Vice Chair Harrison, be moved to 423 to be considered this evening. As the request comes from Trustee Collard and Trustee Rocha, would you like to speak to this at all?
Go ahead, Trustee Rocha.
I was just about to delegate to you, Trustee Collard. Yes, through the chair. The reason why we're requesting for the item to be moved earlier in the agenda is that the report that we're putting forth today is simply housekeeping, as the items that we are presenting as part of the new governance procedure have already been approved in 2 previous motions, and we're just putting it forward that we've done the work. So for that reason, we're asking for a decision to be made today.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on the suggested amendment or suggested amendment to the agenda or any other items on the agenda? Looking to the speakers list. Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda this evening. Oh, sorry. I need to ask Trustee Amos, would you like to move a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I would like to move the agenda to be approved as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. And Trustee Garretts, would you like to second this motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much.
Okay, excellent. So all those in favor?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I apologize. I had tried to submit a request to speak and it
Oh.
didn't go through.
It just appeared now. So
My sincere apologies
That's
for that.
okay.
You know me in technology. I just wanted to request information. You know that there is the OPSBA report and a motion within the OPSBA report. Can that be done within committees, or does it need an agenda change?
So I'm getting a lot of feedback from your microphone. So I just want to confirm what I think you've said, that there's a committee report from OPSBA and you'd like to have it considered in the committee reports area, and it has a motion attached.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam.
Okay. Is there any discussion from anybody on that? I don't suspect there would be. Okay. So all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, including moving the item that has to do with the governance procedure and the addition of the OPSBA report that has a motion in it. And that carries unanimously, I believe. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We do not have any Inspire Word presentations this evening, but they will be presented at the next regular board meeting, which will be our last regular board meeting of this year on June the 16th. Please do continue to nominate individuals or groups who support our students and their achievements. Nomination information is available on the hdsb.ca website, and we accept those nominations all summer long. Okay, next we are up to presentations. This evening we have a presentation from Alexis Graham and Tyler Henry. Are these presenters in our Google Meet this evening?
Hi, we're here.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. So I have, and I'll just bring it up here. Can you see the timer on my screen there? Says 10 minutes? Okay. So you have 10 minutes for your presentation to the board. And following the presentation, I will open the floor to questions of clarification to you from the trustees, or the trustees will be able to ask questions of the staff pertaining to your presentation. Do you understand everything? Okay. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and begin.
Good evening. My name is Alexis Graham,
And my name is Tyler Henry.
and we are grade 12 students at White Oak Secondary School. First, on behalf of both of us, we'd like to say thank you. Thank you for inviting us to speak today at this board meeting.
We wanted to start off by saying how much it means to us that this extremely important issue is finally receiving the attention it deserves, and that the voices of so many students who speak out against the racism that they face on a daily basis has been silenced and ignored for so long. So it's truly important that today their struggles will be heard. In the interest of time, this presentation is a condensed version of the original statement, stories, and proposal that was sent to all trustees. So for additional information, that can be referred to if needed.
I've been a student at White Oaks for the past 4 years. In my first year at White Oaks, I was quickly introduced to the harsh realities of racism within our school environment, starting with the reading of To Kill a Mockingbird. I remember my teacher writing the N-word on the board, which opened up a whole new door to anti-Black racism in the White Oaks community. There have been multiple incidents over the years. In 9th grade, students mocked me for speaking out against the casual use of the N-word. In 10th grade, students made hateful comments about me in a group chat and proudly flaunted their use of the N-word around me. In 11th grade, after enduring these years of constant ignorance, I contacted the principals at my school, and after days of conversations with my vice principal, accountability was just a phone call home. I received a single apology and no updates afterwards. Now, in 12th grade, after the anti-Black vandalism on the bleachers and the field at our school, I spoke out on my social media and was met with huge backlash from students who harassed me for days using the N-word, and one went as far as to wish that I would get stabbed.
Unfortunately, Alexis's story of racist behavior at school is not an isolated incident, and it's a shared experience of many students. We've collected some stories from students within the HTSB, and we would like to share some of the unsettling responses that we've received. I'm Colombian and have been told many times by several students to go contact my uncle Pablo to get them drugs. I also hear the N-word at least once a week, and the people telling others to stop using it get made fun of. The N-word is thrown around the hallways like it's nothing. I've witnessed Black individuals being called the N-word by non-Black individuals. Teachers do almost nothing when they hear the N-word being said by non-Black individuals. Casual racism is something that I witness every day. I am biracial, Black and white, and I hear kids that are not Black use the N-word often. I have also been referred to as a monkey, and people tell me that they found me scary because they thought I was ghetto or going to shoot them or something. I am Arabic with a Muslim family, and a boy once asked me if I speak Taristani. When I was in elementary school, there were these kids who'd make fun of me for being Chinese. They'd say racist comments like, "Do you eat dogs?" or "Why are your eyes so slanty?" as well as mocking my language. Non-Black students say the N-word throughout the school. A specific teacher said that Pakistan and India are the same thing when a girl corrected him after he misidentified her as Indian. There's a lack of effort to properly identify two students of the same race, for example, always mixing up the two Black people in the room. The question of which one are you again is not okay. Also, a white student showed KKK videos to students of color. These stories portray an environment that I believe is unfit for learning or education, and no one should be subjected to the hateful language that so many students face every single day within schools. And it doesn't stay confined within our school communities, but it extends out into the general community and population. Despite so many people becoming desensitized to these kinds of comments on account of how often they're heard, they're never forgotten by the people that they're made towards, and we can't continue to stand by as discrimination and harassment persist within our schools.
We reviewed the policies put in place by the Halton District School Board and found that many of the policies are good on paper, but students aren't seeing the effect of these procedures and protocols in our school. After attending the anti-racism focus group that happened just earlier, other students feel the exact same way. For example, administration fails to follow the discriminatory and harmful language protocol, as teachers and staff seldom intervene when inappropriate comments are made. Not even the first step of the protocol is taken, never mind the following steps that explain why the comment was harmful, attend to the needs of the person who the comment was made towards, and report the incident that took place. Also, within the administrative procedure, it states that all cases of disrespectful conduct and discrimination or harassment that are reported will be dealt with, but we know that students who are targeted by this harassment and discrimination receive little to no justice as accountability is not enforced.
The administrative procedure also highlights the severity of harassment with the quote, discrimination and harassment which are contrary to the Human Rights Code and the Occupational Health and Safety Act undermines the dignity and mutual respect of individuals in the system, threatens personal well-being and performance, and will not be tolerated. And although this is a wonderful sentiment, it does not feel valued within our institutions of education. Moreover, specifically to White Oaks, we've reviewed the student handbook, and there is a section that speaks about our dress code, which states specific guidelines for what is allowed and what is not allowed, as well as stating consequences for students who violate dress code. And then in the only section that speaks about harassment, not only is it more than 2 times shorter, the section on dress code, but it also does not explicitly condemn harassment, nor does it state that any consequences will be given to students who threaten the safe and inclusive environment that the handbook insists that the school is working towards creating and maintaining.
So to deal with these issues, Tyler and I came up with 3 proposals that we would want the board to implement. 1 would be already enforcing policies, procedures, and protocols that are in place by the Halton District School Board. 2 would be a mandatory racial sensitivity learning as a new form of progressive discipline. And 3, being proper accountability for online racism. I believe the first and the last proposal go hand in hand. In our original proposal document, we spoke about Halton District School Board's claims of a zero tolerance policy and how we believe that that zero tolerance policy is not upheld. So the first proposal would be to properly uphold that. The second one about online racism would be we ask that online incidents are treated the same as those that happen in school. Since creating these proposals, we are informed by Stuart Miller that contrary to what our vice principal has told us, the school has the responsibility to address incidents of online racism.
Finally, our third proposal is the racial sensitivity learning. Students, we believe, are aware that the slurs are offensive, but we don't think that they fully understand the severity of their words because it's something that's rarely spoken about in schools. And if it is, it's typically done poorly. But Alexis and I believe that ignorance can only be expelled through proper education and understanding. So that's why we think it's necessary for the racial sensitivity to happen in order to stop harmful language. So we think that there should be an in-school suspension for students who have a history of making racist comments towards others. And during this in-school suspension, which the length would be determined case by case by staff, during lunch breaks, they will be taught by a teacher who has undergone the training, the Way Forward training, and they will have a conversation about the comment they made and why it was offensive or inappropriate, as well as they will learn about the group they offended, the group's history, culture, and so on, so that they can become more informed on the group and they would apologize to the student that they offended. So far, we've worked with Counselor Lisa Kearns and Mayor Burton to create a motion that was approved by the Regional Council. And we've also spoken to Mr. Miller, Mr. Etoff, and Dr. Amoa about our initiative. And so far, an investigation has been started. As today, focus groups speaking about racism have commenced, and a plan for what will happen based on the information that they gather will come of it. And recently, we've also started working with Counselor Paramar about the mental health aspect that affects students impacted by racism.
Before we close, we'd like to extend some questions to you. We want to know what will be done about accountability because so far, we as students have experienced very little action in this regard. How can the connections between the trustees and the students be strengthened so that our voices can be heard? We would also like to know if our proposals can be implemented or could be implemented, as we believe that they are integral to providing a safe school experience and ensuring that instances of racism are less frequent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now turn the mic to questions from trustees. There are to be questions of clarification or questions to the staff. So the first person on the speakers list looks to be Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you to our presenters, thank you for coming this evening. It takes a lot of courage to speak to something that's so deeply personal and to the hurt that you have felt through your years in school. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. My question is, are you aware that there's a report coming to board tonight about anti-Black racism and our role as leaders in creating an anti-racist environment in all of our schools and workplaces in the Halton District School Board? And I just was wondering if you were aware of the learning that we have been undergoing in the last year and the steps that we're taking to improve. We recognize there's room for improvement, and we are trying to make those steps forward. Just wondering what your thoughts are on what we've done so far.
Go right ahead.
Alexis and I have we looked through the Way Forward initiative, and we think that there are a lot of good steps that are being taken, but we think that some things can be added, like what we've mentioned today, and we think that 4 years is a large time span for some things. Some things that were mentioned, like changes in curriculum, we understand that will take time, but others, such as hiring more people of color or having staff call out racism when they see it, we think are things that can be implemented immediately. I don't know if Alexis wanted to add on anything to that.
I agree with Tyler. Like, we did read through the kind of training that the board is going through and the staff, and a lot about the Way Forward as well. So I do agree with Tyler with everything she said.
Okay. The next speaker is Trustee Vidyalankara.
Thanks. I just wanted to quickly say that we really appreciate you speaking. Like, on behalf of students, lots of students have reached out to me and expressed that they appreciate the HDSB Safe Space account and the fact that you've, advocated at this level. I do have a question. I think this is more so addressed to staff, but I know that you've shared a proposal with us. I believe all trustees were CC'd, and I'm not sure if superintendents had a chance to look at it, but I'm wondering, I guess, what the response from the board is to those proposals, because a lot of the proposals, like, you've written it really well, and they directly pinpoint certain policies and recommendations that you've put forward, and as well as other students that you've worked with. So wondering what the response is from our board. I think this is directed to maybe Director Miller.
Sure. Thank you, Trustee Vidyalankara. Through you, Chair Drabens, to the two presenters, Tyler and Alexis. I first of all want to thank you for coming today. As Tyler and Alexis have mentioned, I have met with them, I believe, twice and provided some email updates. And their relating of the experience, their experience and that of other students is unsettling, to say the least. And I was unsettled the minute we saw it. And clearly, whatever we have done is not enough, clearly. And I think at the crux of what Tyler and Alexis are asking, demanding, and they should be demanding, is accountability from the board in a certain respect. With this specific proposal, Superintendent Etoff will help with that. As Alexis had said, there seemed to be some misinformation or erroneous information that schools cannot deal with students who are racist on social media. Absolutely they can, and they should. And we as the senior team have to hold our school administrators responsible if they are not doing that. And if it has not been happening, we will look into that. Superintendent Taha, our human resources superintendent, is also on this call, and at this meeting, and he could talk maybe more specifically about it. The one around, and Tyler and Alexis had asked me about the one around the in-school suspensions and mandatory anti-racism training. It's a real challenge for us as boards, because that all comes under safe schools legislation, and the safe schools legislation is prescriptive, and we are actually not permitted to provide for in-school suspensions. We either have to suspend a student out of school or not suspend them at all, and it makes it challenging around the mandatory training part. We have done things like that, but if a student refuses, the student refuses, and we have no ability to deal with that other than just suspend a student out of the school. It's in my opinion, it does not provide schools nor the board enough flexibility to deal with discipline, particularly of complex cases and situations of race. We need more tools from the provincial government in terms of legislation on how we can deal with these situations. However, having said that, school principals do have a lot of leeway to work with students around these kinds of things and should be working on it. The other proposal around the language and so on, there's no excuses. Every adult in that building should be holding kids to account, holding each other to account, holding staff to account for the language they use in the halls, in the classrooms, in the cafeterias, and everywhere else. And it's my belief that, well, not my belief, I guess what Tyler and Alexis have illustrated is people aren't being held to account for that. Or if they are being held to account, it's not systematic and it is not consistent. So we still need to do some more work around that, clearly. Every student needs to feel like they belong. And I think the only way we're going to get there is embracing the spirit of what Tyler and Alexis have said around accountability. So Trustee Vindalakar, I hope that answers your question. It was a bit long-winded, but I think it was important to be said as director of the board that I support these two students and what they have said. Absolutely. So I don't know if Superintendent Taha's got he can fill in a little bit about our accountability in terms of, shall we say, discipline. Superintendent Taha?
Thanks, Director Miller. Through you, Chair Grubens, to the rest trustees. First, I'd like to say, Tyler and Alexis, my heart goes out to you for experiencing what you had experienced. And I echo the words of our trustees, Director Miller, and some of the words that you've heard during your meeting with Superintendent Ita and Dr. Jula Moa. No matter how many policies we have in place, and how much we hold people accountable, one incident where accountability isn't upheld is one too many. And I don't say that lightly. As a student, as an immigrant to this country, as a student in publicly funded schools in Ontario, I've experienced certain things, not unlike what you've experienced, and I know what you are feeling. In terms of what Director Miller had spoken about, what I can say to you is, yes, these policies are sources of authority that allow us to hold teachers accountable. Anyone in the school board is really bound by these policies, be it students. Well, I shouldn't say students because they don't explicitly say students, but I would say they are accountable to these policies. Volunteers, any member of the committee, no one is above the law. So if there are incidents that you feel haven't been addressed appropriately and sufficiently, we would need to know about them so we can follow up. And if you're saying that the follow-up is lacking, is insufficient, that's something we need to improve on. I'm not familiar with all of the details. I am familiar with some and with your proposals, and I think they are good ones, and we have to do a good job implementing them. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker on the speakers list is Trustee Shuttleworth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. First off, to Tyler and Alexis, I'm so sorry. I don't know how much that means because it's one voice, but I'm sorry for all that you had to go through. My question, I think, might be for Director Miller. So Your third recommendation centers around racial sensitivity training. So I know, Director Miller, you're saying that we are tied into what we can and can't do, but I'm wondering if there is a way, you know how there's certain training that we all have to go through to get accredited to come into a school. Is there any way that there could be some kind of sensitivity training that becomes part and parcel of onboarding and it might already be there for staff, and when there is an incident in the school, could it be, I know we can't in school suspend, but almost like a homework or something that the students would have to do in order to return to school or be in the school community?
Through you, Vice Chair, through you, Chair Grabentz, to Trustee Shuttleworth, in terms of staff, we can absolutely implement mandatory training. And we have had mandatory, and Superintendent Etoff can talk about that, which, you know, based on what Alexis and Tyler have said, makes me even more unsettled, because we started this training in September and it's still going on, and this is June. So it's a little unnerving that this has happened, but with staff, we absolutely can and do. With students, it is more challenging because discipline of students is outlined in safe schools legislation. And some of the trustees have sat on appeal boards around that, and we are not able to do it in a way that says, okay, you have to do this homework on anti-Black racism or anti-Indigenous racism. If the student doesn't do it, what's the alternative? Suspension out of school. So, you know, I'm not trying to cop out of it, because I know for Tyler and Alexis, this sounds a little bit like a cop out, but it's like the borders of that legislation are like this: suspend out of school, exclude, or not. That's basically it. And so if you put other stuff in, and I was a principal and I was a teacher at White Oak, we did do other things. But the challenge becomes if the student is not cooperative or the parents are not cooperative, there's not much you can do. There's very little you can do. They make an appeal, you lose the appeal. And so I think there's an element for Tyler and Alexis and other students in this province, and Trustee Vindalakara, to be lobbying the provincial government around those kinds of things, to provide school boards some flexibility in dealing with these kinds of issues. Because suspending out of school, and I think Tyler, Alexis, and Trustee Vindalakara would agree with us, suspending a student out of school for racist comments is probably not going to be very successful or change that behavior. All it does is get the perpetrator out of the building for a while. But that perpetrator comes back. And so we need some more tools. I know Superintendent Podra-Barrick's on the line. He's our Safe Schools superintendent. And Superintendent Etoff wants to address a little bit as well. But that's one of the problems with it. But with staff, absolutely we can do it.
Can I have a quick follow-up? I know that I've seen in some schools there's a practice of restorative justice, which somewhat I think comes into line with this sort of idea. So I am fully supportive of, you know, backing you in your lobbying of government to try and get that flexibility in there. But I do just, you know, those are all the things I think about, is how can we align what Alexis and Tyler are advocating for with our current practice. So how can we creatively think about those types of things? Because I think there are ways that we can. I know, as you said, Director Miller, there are those rigid boundaries, but.
And for certain, you're correct. Restorative justice is a practice we do and we do use, but again, it requires cooperation, and that's Superintendent Etoff.
Yeah, maybe I'll just jump in for a bit. And I know we've been focused on the disciplinary piece, but maybe just in terms of a little bit more on the upfront piece. And so, yes, there are all kinds of actually, before I even start, hi Tyler, hi Alexis. For anybody who doesn't know, I was their principal at Sunningdale Public School. So It was great connecting, not in this way, but it was nice connecting with them. Them again. I certainly wish it was under different circumstances. I would say first and foremost, education is a critical component of this piece. So if you're waiting to have a conversation about racist language when nothing else has been done within class around educating all individuals in the building about the protocol, about why it exists, what they can expect, and not just about the discriminatory and harmful language protocol, but also integrating and weaving it as part of our as part of the curriculum cross-curricular experience. Examining different perspectives. Examining colonialism and the impact of that and what that looks like. Teaching our students and in turn teaching our staff about the importance of raising critical consciousness as we learn in our buildings. So absolutely, we have tools to address this. I'm incredibly disappointed given really the major focus that we have put on this piece this year. There has been regular training on a monthly basis with staff, modules developed, but we're hearing clearly from the students that it's still not happening. So moving into the fall, we absolutely need to look at the recommendations that these young ladies have put forward. But we also need to look beyond that as well in terms of monitoring and in terms of accountability and in terms of communication. Making it really clear how students that they don't have to go this route to presenting to a board of trustees or to regional council, but they have clear avenues to express their frustration and their concerns, and there are clear expectations on board staff in terms of communicating what is in fact being done when concerns are raised.
And it looks like we're about to hit we're kind of heading over time. Vice Chair Harrison.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you very, very much. For me, human stories are transformative, and I believe that's the way that things are going to change because they have real impact. They speak to, which you did, both the heart and the mind, which I just want to say thank you. I also wanted to say that under a later item, and I believe Trustee Collard maybe alluded to this, there is a motion coming forward that has some information about creating another forum for student voice. So if you want to tune in a little later, hopefully you'll be able to hear about that. And I also want to say thank you for starting the dialogue at a community level. So you first presented at regional council. And at first I kind of went, I wonder why they presented at regional council. Why didn't they come to the Board of Trustees? But, the more I thought about it, I think there's great wisdom in that because this is really a whole community issue. Because of course, students go home to families, everybody interacts in community. And therefore, I see the wisdom in your choice. I just wondered if what informed you to follow that path? That's my question and all of those ramblings.
Originally, like Tyler and I said at the beginning of our presentation to you guys, we sent the email that has our statement and our proposals and stories, so more detail to all of the trustees. And to put it honestly, we heard from Councillor Kearns and Mayor Burton before we heard from any trustees. So we took the help where we got it first. It wasn't supposed to be kind of a going behind the board's back type thing. Not that you said that, but just so that I can put that out there. It wasn't supposed to be that kind of thing. It was just that's kind of the help that we kind of received first. Tyler, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say that our original email was specifically intended for administration and for trustees, and that's who we sent it to. We honestly didn't expect anyone outside of the board to reply to our email, but we did initially intend to come to administration and trustees. It's just that we did receive a response from Stuart Miller, but we didn't receive much of a response initially from the trustees. We did have the email saying that they acknowledged that Mr. Miller had reached out to us, but other than that, we didn't have any communication from them. So that's why we went to council instead of trustees.
And the email Tyler mentioned was from Trustee Grabank. So thank you for reaching out to us.
So may I make a comment, Chair Grabens? Our normal practice, just so you know, Tyler and Alexis, so that you're aware, when the email came in, the normal practice would be by the trustees not to wait to see if the director responds, but to see what the director's response was. And when they saw my response that I said we would be meeting with you, or I could recall, I can't remember exactly what I said. I think trustees were satisfied that stuff was on the move. Things were getting more. And if you'll recall, I replied also. All the other people on there saw that. And the mayor of Halton Hills also weighed in, Rick Bennett, and said that he expressed his concerns and said, thank you. I see that Director Miller will be meeting with you and so on. So I just wanted you to know that.
And also just to let you know that as chair of the board, I do speak on behalf of the board. So instead of getting 11 different emails from 11 different trustees, they've seen my response, and rather than crowding everybody's emails. And if there was a further issue, it's likely that it would come through me. So perhaps we need to review that. Because obviously you interpret it a different way than the intent. So,
here's the bench. May I make a final comment, please?
Yes.
Tyler and Alexis are two pretty courageous people. There's no question about that. But although they have talked about this situation, and I spoke with them about it, this is not unique to White Oaks. Just this afternoon, Dr. Jula Moa and I met with a group of grade 7 and 8 girls in our system from different schools in Halton who expressed very similar concerns and issues that Tyler and Alexis have. And myself, Superintendent Etoff, Dr. Jula Moa, I think Associate Director Bo, we have met Superintendent Taha, Superintendent Newton. We have met with various school groups this year. And we're hearing the same stories. I believe we're making progress, but I think progress is like we're just chipping away at it, and we've got to make huge steps at it. I think we're making those steps, but we haven't made the large steps yet. So Tyler and Alexis have brought an issue here, which they've so described so passionately and articulately, and I think it's a story and it's a message and it's everything that we all need to hear. But I don't want trustees or the public thinking that it's a unique story to White Oaks. It's happening in our other schools as well, and we're determined to fix it in our other schools as well. And I don't know if Superintendent Etoff or Dr. Jula Moa, who sits in with me on most of those meetings, have a comment on that.
Thank you. Through the chair. Hello, Tyler and Alexis. Very nice to see. As the director has said, we are working on initiatives to really strengthen accountability. This is also a directive from the ministry. The ministry has said that, school boards should really focus on anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism particularly, in order to address the systemic issues and experiences of students in schools and staff as well.
And so we are certainly working to be more accountable in our frame of accountability, more transparent, and I will just leave it at that, right? We have to be more transparent in the actions and the monitoring and enforcement of those. Superintendent Eaton?
Yeah, I don't think I have a lot more to add than what I said before, which is I agree 100% with Dr. Jewel Lamoa, and with our presenters this evening. The policies, the procedures, the commitment from the board through the multi-year plan, and through the way forward. It's clearly laid out, and now it's really moving from words to action. I see us really well positioned, given the past work and given the strong foundation that we have in place across our board. But truly, in order to move it from words on pages into real action to ensure that's having a real impact on what's going on in our classrooms and in our hallways, we absolutely need to leverage a further planning and further plans with respect to accountability and monitoring measures, which I can speak for the whole board in saying that we are fully committed to doing moving forward.
Okay, so we have exhausted our time. And I just want to say to Tyler and Alexis, thank you so much for coming out tonight and giving us your presentation and expressing, it's it's often hard to understand the experiences of students, especially students that have a different experience, come from different cultural backgrounds, are Black, Indigenous, and it's important. It's very important that we hear from our students, that we know that how their experience is going and how we can make it better. Because if you're not feeling safe or welcome or feel like you belong in your community, you're going to have a hard time feeling like well about who you are and being able to reach your potential. And that's what we want. So thank you again for coming out and enlightening us this evening. Really appreciate it. So thank you. And I guess you can watch the rest of the meeting this evening through either online through the HDSB website or on YouTube. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Goodbye.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Okay.
Chair DeBence, the superintendents will now be making phone calls related to the private report on administration moves. So some of them may not be available. If there's questions, we'll take them and maybe answer them later.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we are now up to consent agenda items. Trustee Daniele, would you like to move a motion to deal with the consent agenda this evening?
Thank you. Yes, I would.
Excellent. Trustee Gray, would you like to second?
Hey, yes, I would.
Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items for June the 2nd, 2021. Are there any items that need to be pulled for discussion this evening? If I'm going to look over to the speakers list here. Seeing none. So all those in favor? And that, oh, not quite. Missing 2. Is anybody having trouble with their voting?
Trustee Gray is verbal.
Okay, and that's, I'm assuming it's a yes then?
Yes,
Okay, excellent. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are going to move up to ratification action items. Approval of business transacted in private session. Vice Chair Harrison, do we have any business from private session that requires approval?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. So I will read the following motion. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolution from the Halton District School Board meeting in private session on June 2nd, 2021, respecting property matters, report 21087, and I so move.
Thank you. Trustee Collard, would you like to second this motion?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving up to action items for this evening. As per the amended agenda, we have 3 action items for this evening. I'd like to draw your attention to number 421, 2021 Education Development Charge Bylaw Amendment, Report 21076, submitted by Superintendent Nagoy. Trustee Garrett, would you like to move this?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Shuttleworth, would you like to second?
Sure.
Excellent. I'll read the recommendation. Be it resolved that a separate public meeting is not required in regard to the proposed amendment to the Halton District School Board 2018 EDC bylaw as amended, and that the Halton District School Board enact a bylaw which will amend the 2018 EDC bylaw as amended to apply to the development of land in the region of Halton, and that the amending EDC bylaw amend the board's EDC bylaw 2018 as attached in Appendix 1 of Report 21076, specifically in Section 3, Section 9, and Section 12. Before I open the floor to debate, Superintendent Nagoy, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, through the Chair, Governmental Trustees. This report is with regards to the Education Development Charges Bylaw Amendment is here for approval tonight. It contains changes from the previous version in red for your quick review, but I would like to turn it to General Manager Thibault and our consultants. We have our EDC consultant, Jack Mandolia, on the line, as well as our legal counsel, Brad Teichman, to walk you through the methodology for amending the bylaw, as well as the new rates that we're proposing tonight.
Through you, Chair Gerbens, and I'll just be quick about it, and I'll pass it over to Jack. As Superintendent Nagoy pointed out with regards to the changes, we've highlighted them in red as part of the report, and essentially the subject matter of the changes all relate to the alteration of the proposed rates for both the residential and non-residential components of the bylaw, as well as a slight adjustment to the resolution so that we didn't have to read all the very long and verbose portion of it. That's essentially everything that we have changed since the last report, and Mr. Amendolia will be going through a presentation which highlights this and provides additional context and information with regards to the EDC bylaw amendment that we're proposing tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred, and thank you for having me tonight. It's nice to see everybody. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Okay, so what I'm going to do is go through the findings of the EDC amendment review. I'm going to provide a little bit of context and history to the existing charge, and then talk about some of the legislative changes, and then go through the proposed amending rates. So the existing charge right now, so just a little bit of history actually. So the existing charge covers the entire region of Halton. It's a uniform charge, which means it's the same rate throughout the entire region. The board passed its existing in-force bylaw on June 29th, 2018, and that bylaw came into force on July 4th. And just for some a quick memory refresh, that bylaw was enacted with a term of 1 year at the pre-existing 2013 EDC rate, and we'll get into the why in a second. So the rate was $4,364 per residential unit and $1.11 per square foot on non-residential gross floor area. And again, your charge is allocated 85% to residential and 15% to non-residential development. So a little bit about why that charge was frozen at that 2013 rate, and probably this board and this group of trustees is very aware because a lot of that occurred during the 2017-18 EDC renewal process. In fact, this board's bylaw was actually suspended, or it actually lapsed for a week while the government was dealing with some of these EDC changes to the legislation. Ultimately, the legislation was changed, and Ontario Regulation 438.18 basically froze EDC rates. And what it basically said was that whatever your board's rate was on August 31st, 2018, you could pass a new bylaw that renewed the bylaw, but the rate had to stay frozen. Then a little bit later, in the spring of 2019, the government made some further legislative changes and basically thawed the freeze, as I like to say. So it didn't completely get rid of the freeze, but what it did is it put in or included a provisional phase-in of proposed EDC rates. And in a nutshell, what that phase-in said, or what that phase-in did, it said you could increase your residential rate by $300 over what that existing rate was, or 5%, whichever was greater. And the same thing on the non-residential side. However, at the time, you can now increase it by 10 cents or 5%, whichever was greater. But at the time, they only had the 5% increase for the non-residential side. And then basically it said for every year thereafter, you can continue increasing by that same amount, $300 or 5% on the residential side, 5% on the non-residential side. So as a result of that, in 2019, the board amended their 2018 bylaw to incorporate some of these new legislative changes. So again, you were permitted to increase the EDC rates by $300 over your residential, 5% for your non-residential. So you amended that 2018 bylaw on May 25th, 2019, again, to increase the residential rates. And to also, if you recall what I mentioned a minute ago, the initial bylaw was only put in for a period of 1 year under direction from the ministry. The amending bylaw also increased your existing bylaw to the maximum term of 5 years. And the phase-in that amending bylaw provided looked like what we're looking at now. So you can see on the left side, the $43.64 and $1.11 on non-residential side was the 2018 rate. When you implemented the phase-in, it was able to go up to $46.64, so $300 on the residential side. But you'll notice that in year two, it didn't go up by 300, but only up to $48.92. So the one qualifier in this is that it can go up $300 per year up to what the maximum proposed rate was. And back in 2018, that was $48.92. So again, it stops there. On the non-residential side, the proposed rate was the same as the existing rate. So the residential rate was fixed. So basically, it brings us to where we're at today at year three of the bylaw, $4,892 and $1.11 on the non-res side. You're maxed out based on that proposed maximum rate from 2018. However, as the board does on an annual basis, board staff asks an appraiser to look at land values throughout the region to ensure that the current land values kept pace with what was proposed in the EDC bylaw. And just a quick note that the board actually asked appraisers to look at the land values last year as well, but the appraisers found that this was just before the pandemic, that land values at the time were consistent with what was estimated in the 2018 background study and the escalation rates provided therein. However, fast forward to this past winter, again, as part of the board staff's annual process, asked appraisers to look at land values. In fact, they had gone up. And I think that's probably not a surprise to everybody listening tonight, knowing what housing prices are doing in the GTA and the region of Halton. Again, not a surprise that land values also have increased. So you can see on the chart that the 2018 values in the left column for Oakville, 2.37 increased to about 2.83 per million per acre, about just shy of 20% increase. In Milton, in 2018 bylaw, about 1.81 up to about 2.32 million per acre, almost 30% increase. And in Halton Hills, about 1.6 in 2018, now also over that $2 million mark, about 2.02 million per acre, again, about a 27% increase in the land values. So as a result of those increases in the land values, we are able to recalculate that maximum charge. So if you recall, I mentioned that because of that maximum charge, regardless of the phase-in, you are capped out at $48.92 and $1.11. As a result of these increases in land values, the new proposed maximum charges are now $6,539 on the residential side, $1.52 on the non-residential side. So we are now able to increase those maximum rates. And what happens as a result of the phase-in rules is we can now go instantly if the board passes an amending bylaw. So not instantly, but in 5 days when the bylaw comes into effect, you can go from that existing rate of $48.92, increase it by the $300 that are permitted, up to $51.92. And then in July, on the anniversary of the bylaw date, this July, you can increase by a further $300 to $54.92. So about after that anniversary date in July, about $600 more than what your existing rate is on the and then ultimately at $57.92 in the last year of the bylaw. On the non-residential side, as I mentioned, we were capped at $1.11 per square foot. It can go up by the permitted 10 cents when the amending bylaw takes effect to $1.21. Similar to the residential on the anniversary date in about 2 months, it can go up a further 10 cents to $1.31. And then that final 10-cent increase in year 5 of the bylaw to $1.41. So these are the proposed phase-in rates that we're recommending and consistent with the legislation and consistent with the new proposed maximum rate. So again, just to really quickly reiterate, if the board passed an amending bylaw, the new amending rate would be $5,192 residential, $1.21 non-residential. And just to finish off tonight, in addition to the amendment to deal with the increase in land values, there were also some changes made to the legislation with regard to some of the changes I spoke about earlier. And in addition to the phase-in, there were also some exemptions, additional exemptions that were put into the legislation. So basically, we're cleaning up the bylaw as well. So in addition to the amendment to deal with land values, we're going to put in those additional exemptions into the new amending bylaw. And as was mentioned, your EDC legal counsel, Mr. Teichman, is here and can answer any questions and speak more specifically to that part of the amending bylaw. If the recommendation of the amending bylaw is enacted, the bylaw would come into force on June 2nd, 2021. So that would be tonight. Legislation says that the bylaw then, collection on that bylaw can commence 5 days later. However, that's on, and that would be on June 7th, 2021. So I'm happy to take any questions. Or I don't know if Brad, you want to speak to any of the exemption legislation? You're on mute, Brad.
Thank you, Jack. With the chair's permission, I don't know if there's any questions but, and I'll be brief, Jack covered everything. The board has satisfied all the statutory requirements in order to position it to pass this bylaw that'll amend the board's 2018 EDC bylaw. And we discussed previously, I think 2 weeks ago, that we had negotiations with the Building Industry and Land Development Association. We've reached a compromise with them on what the charges should be in order to avoid the potential of an appeal, which nobody wants. And so I think we sort of struck a fair balance. And I understand that Build sent a letter to Director Miller setting that out, that they're not opposing these increases. And again, just the reason why the rates have gone down from the initial report that General Manager Thibault submitted to the board, there were two interpretations to the governing legislation. We initially adopted the interpretation that was a bit more aggressive, with a view to increasing the rate, reducing or eroding the deficit in the board's EDC account. Build objected, so then we compromised on the second interpretation, which produces increases in the rates nonetheless, albeit more modest increases. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking to the speakers list. There's nobody on there right now, but I'll jump in with a question or two. And the question I have is, so the way I understand our EDC's work is that we are forever in a deficit, correct? How big is our deficit right now? B, what are our service costs for that deficit? And C, how do we ever get out of it? Go ahead, Superintendent Ngoy.
Perhaps I'll jump in for you, Chair Grabans, and to you, Chair Grabans. Our current deficit sits around 25 million when we look at accrued sales, I'm sorry, not sales, but upcoming purchases. We are, however, looking at 3 to 4 additional land purchases for new schools in North Oakville and South Milton. So if we are looking at the next, I'll say 2 years, perhaps, our deficit could reach about $70 million, less any EDC levies that we collect this year and next year. So potentially, if I had to guess, in 2 years, we may be at around 50 million net of those charges. So yes, we do have a deficit. We've had a bit of a pause in purchasing land. However, there's a number of sites that are coming up for purchasing, and it's going to be significantly higher over the next 2 years, which is a little bit concerning. As of right now, we are able to internally borrow, so it's really against our own cash balances. So it doesn't, we still have an interest rate that we can apply to the amount of the deficit. I don't have that amount right now, what it was over, last year. And currently, when we do have an accrual, it hasn't actually hit. We haven't paid the money out. So we don't have that interest incurred on the balance of accruals. However, interest accrued on EDC balances continues to increase that deficit as we go forward. At one point, it may be necessary that we go into our operating line of credit where we do have room, but it will incur a higher interest rate at that point.
So really, the banks are the big winners in all of this. Again, we keep accruing and accruing. How do we ever catch up? Do we ever catch up with the actual deficit with the EDCs? Because, it's taking us a number of years to reach that maximum. So we're losing in all that time, and of course all the previous time that those land, the land has been rising in cost, but our EDCs have not been catching up. Do we ever catch up? If you forecast or anything, or where do we go from here?
And again, for you, Chair Grabans, and to you, Chair Grabans, it's meant to be recovered over a 15-year period. So in theory, it should be fully covered. However, it is dependent on how many charges we receive every year based on the development progress. The risk we are running with having this capped is that it will go beyond the 15 years. And the additional one is that anything that is beyond those 15 years, it will add on to those few permits that will be required at the end when growth is, when you only have those little infill areas and there's no more growth, then what happens to that last permit? Is that going to be $50 million? Is the last unit that is being built in Halton will have a price tag of around, whatever the deficit may be at the time. So we are passing the problem to future development and future developers as well, and customers purchasing homes. So it is a problem. We continue to work with the ministry and with the developers as well as we go through these methodologies to try to align so that we recover the revenues more in line with that 15-year mark. I believe that our consultants may have a bit more details on that.
No, I was going to reiterate what you mentioned. I mean, the 15-year cash flow is always calculated so that it's zero net. I mean, at the end of 15 years, you're basically supposed to collect exactly what your EDC land needs are. Obviously, that's dependent on the number of permits being realized every year. That's dependent on land values, and that's sort of this exercise to ensure that you stay on pace with land values. But Superintendent Nagoya hit it on the head in that you're not collecting what we're even supposed to be collecting. So the cash flow, as you saw, is based on collecting 6,500, I think that was the number, 6,539 as your maximum rate, and I think $1.52 non-res. We're not collecting that. Even at the end of 5 years, we're not hitting that maximum rate. So there's a gap built into the calculation because of the government phase-in, and so you're limited on only collecting that $300 per year increase. So again, in your 2018 bylaw, not a real big deal because you hit your maximums on the non-res instantly, on the res after year 2. In this case, with the big jump in land values, and there's no end in sight to that right now, then you get into a real predicament when that delta between what your max is and what the permitted phase-ins are. And like was mentioned by Superintendent Nagoya, it's either at some point, it's either going to be those last few permits when there's not development that is going to need new schools, but still paying off the debt. Or, I mean, realistically, is the government going to allow an EDC permit to cost $50 million? So, I mean, probably thinking down the road, it's probably going to be a burden that's going to be passed on to taxpayers at some point, which defeats the whole purpose of the growth paying for growth.
Okay, and I'll just ask one last short question, and it just has to do with risk. Is there a risk that lenders will not lend us the money as we grow our deficit? Does it affect our credit? Anything like that?
Excellent question. And for you, Chair Grabans, yes, there is, but not in the short term, because right now we do have a strong financial position. We can handle the $50 million deficit. However, if it continues to grow, we do run into the risk that we would have to go back to ask for a bigger line of credit with more room. We are not allowed to mortgage, especially not allowed to mortgage land. So we do have restrictions. So long term, there is a risk. Short term, and if the charges are able to keep up with the appreciation of land, the appraisal values, then we should be okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Vice Chair Al Harrison has popped on the speakers list.
Oh, yes, thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. My question is, what kind of advocacy around this issue is taking place at the provincial level, and how pervasive is this across boards, particularly boards that are similar to the HDSB in terms of growth?
So in terms of advocacy, we do work with the ministry and inform the ministry and the minister's cabinet on these issues. We do have a direct line, and we've been keeping that up, both at the superintendent and directors level, as well as through our operations committees provincially. So there's a lot of information. The ministry staff are aware of the impact this is having. Not all boards are EDC eligible. So this is only those boards that have growth, and there's additional criteria involved. They have to have enough growth and a deficit and, over utilization, etc. So there's a number of criteria that they would have to meet in order to be able to collect these levies. I would say that some of the boards that have that are in our situation would be those around us and potentially the Waterloo region boards. And we do communicate. We do have our committee, and as we are able to on a monthly basis to raise issues, that would be the forum. Certainly through trustee associations, that's another good forum to provide information and pressures that boards are facing, and this would be one of those pressures that I would mention.
Vice Chair Harrison, do you have a follow-up at all?
I don't. It's just a difficult scenario, and the gap is gonna keep growing and going up. So I really do not like passing issues on to the next person or the next generation, but I'm at a loss for additional, things we could do to try and elevate this issue, because we can't solve it on our own. We're bound to the formulas and etc. So no follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you. Though your commentary is valuable. Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for coming out this evening. Really appreciate it. Okay, now I'd like to draw your attention to item 422, Student Trustee Advocacy for Menstrual Equity, report 21090. And this is submitted by Trustee Oliver and Trustee Reynolds. Trustee Oliver, would you like to move this item?
Yes, I would like to move the item. Thank you.
Thank you. And Trustee Reynolds, would you like to second?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Thank you. I will read the recommendation. Be it resolved that the chair correspond with the Minister of Education to forward a letter written by the HDSB student trustees and the HDSB Student Senate Equity Subcommittee regarding student-led advocacy for centrally funded and distributed free menstrual products in all schools across Ontario to further support gender and economic equity and to destigmatize menstruation in school. And be it further resolved that the chair's correspondence indicates full support of the HDSB Board of Trustees for this student-led initiative and advocacy. Before I open the floor to debate, would either one of you or one of the student trustees like to speak to it?
Yes, I would invite our student trustees to speak to this wonderful advocacy work. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Through you, the chair, to everybody. So back in February, me and Trustee Vigil and Carl were reached out to by Stephen Mensa, who is the education lead at the Toronto Youth Cabinet. And he explained to us that they're doing this initiative this year, and they're trying to get all the boards in Ontario to send letters to the ministry encouraging funding for menstrual hygiene products in all schools. And as soon as we heard that, we knew that this was something we definitely wanted to be a part of and get on top of right away. And so right then we started meeting with him and with our amazing equity leads on our Senate, Anjana Sudarshan, Anek Dasahi, and Sabrina Nadeem, who have been amazing in writing this letter. And we've been perfecting it and preparing it, getting feedback from people like Dr. Jula Moa. And so now that it's ready, and we are very excited to be able to present it to all of you and hopefully send it.
And I'll just add on to Trustee Taylor's comments. We would really like to thank Dr. Jula Moa and Dr. Rosanna Biseglia for their suggestions and for their guidance in writing this. And of course, the biggest thank you really goes to our Senate Equity Subcommittee, and especially our chair, Anjana Sudarshan, for leading this work. She's graduating this year after many years of dedication to the Senate, and so I just wanted to properly recognize her tremendous efforts and the efforts of the entire Senate and this Equity Subcommittee. I think everyone was really excited about this letter, so we're excited to hopefully see this motion passed. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm looking to the speakers list. I'm seeing none, but I would like to make a comment, and that is and this of course probably speaks to my age more than anything, and my appreciation of you bringing this forward. As a menstruating person going through high school, I knew lots of people that had issues, and it was always a quiet, secretive issue. And I know menstruating people now who leave school because they aren't prepared for their day, and things happen. And I also want to say I really appreciate that this motion is coming from all genders. And that is a great thing. It's not just people who menstruate saying, hey, it's that recognizing that we're all in this together, and this is a natural thing, and we all should be supporting each other. So thank you to everybody involved. I really appreciate that. Still looking at the speakers list. I don't see any speakers at this time. So I will call the question. All those in favor? I think let me see. I'm just missing one person because that went to there. Oh, there we go. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. I would be happy to write a letter to the minister on this. Ecstatic. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item, which was formally number 522. Actually, before we do that, it's just about 8:30. So I am going to call a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Okay, thank you and welcome back. So now I'm going to draw your attention to the item formally numbered 522. It is the third item in our action items this evening. It's Board Committees Governance Procedure Report 21080, submitted by Trustee Rocha, Trustee Shuttleworth, and Trustee Collard. Trustee Rocha, would you like to move this item?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
And Trustee Collard, would you like to second?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the revised Board Committee's governance procedure as appended to Report 21080. Before I open the floor to debate, Trustee Rocha, Collard, or Shuttleworth, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, I would. Through the chair, the report also comes from Trustee L. Harrison. This is a quick summary that back in April, 2 reports were brought to the board to create 2 standing committees. One of them was the Governance Standing Committee. The other was the Professional Development Planning Standing Committee. The board approved the creation of those committees and at the same time approved that we could update the governance procedure to add the 2 committees to the standing committees section of the governance procedure. So seeing as how we were approved to do that, to make that change, today's report is just showing that the 2 committees have been added to the governance procedure.
Okay, thank you. Are there any speakers that would like to speak to this item at all? Any debate? Seeing none. So all those in favor. Oh, wait. I saw something come on the screen and then disappeared. Was that something? I didn't quite see what it was.
Yes, sorry, my I raised the hand went up. I have some motions I'd like to propose, and I don't know if this is the right time right now. No, sorry.
No, I don't think so. Okay. Are there any other? Nope. So go ahead and all those in favor of adjusting the governance procedure. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. We are now up to communications to the board. First off is item 5.1, student trustee reports. Trustee Vidyalankara and Trustee Taylor, do you have a report for us this evening?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. Go right ahead.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Trustee Vidyalankara and I hope everyone is doing well tonight. Over the past weekend, myself, along with another senator, Katie McDonald, attended the Central Ontario Leadership Seminar. This is an event that is put on once a year for students all across Ontario. Usually it's an event for grade 10s held in Toronto. However, due to the cancellation last year, it was held virtually this past weekend for grade 10 and 11 students who did not get to attend last year. Through different speeches, panels, and activities, we learned a lot of leadership skills surrounded by other students who embodied those same leadership qualities. Now on to our Senate subcommittees. Our mental health subcommittee has continued with their projects in regards to their video and mental health poster contest. We have decided to launch the contest in the summer, however, to give students a fun and educational project to keep themselves busy with. This will also give our senior senators who are not returning a chance to see their project through. We are very excited about this project, and we think it will be a great opportunity for students to participate in and observe the results of. We thank HDSB Manager for Mental Health, Michelle Bates, for her and her team's continued support. Our equity subcommittee is also finishing the year with a lot of great projects. Firstly, as we spoke of earlier, the finish of the menstrual equity letter. They have been working for the last 4 months on this letter and are thrilled that it is now coming in front of all of you. Along with this, they have been working on a guide for schools to start their own trilogy clubs and teams. These are essentially equity meetings between students, staff, and community. Their goal is to encourage these clubs in all schools and help students start them. Finally, they are currently working on a video to promote equity and inclusion in the HDSB. They are very excited about this project and hope to have all of this done by the end of June. Our sports subcommittee has also continued their great work in progressing the return of sports. Last week, they met with the MPP of Oakville and North Burlington to discuss how sports will safely return through Ontario's Stage 3 reopening plan. They are continuing to try and meet with a Halton health official to further discuss the safe return of sports.
Our environmental subcommittee has continued to aim their focus towards the Environmental Inspiration Award. I'm happy to share that a nomination form and rubric has been created, and the EMT is currently seeking feedback from student senators on the two forms. So at a recent Student Senate Environmental Subcommittee, our EMT student reps shared the two forms for a beta test. We look forward to the finalized award process so we can begin to recognize the amazing environment-related actions of students and to inspire other students to do the same. Moving on to our last update, and certainly not the least, after many months of hard work and diligent planning, we are proud to announce that the 19th Annual Halton Youth Leadership Symposium was a great success. This year was the first time our conference was held on an online platform. While this was uncharted territory, it supported the attendance of almost 260 grade 7 and 8 participants, which is a larger number of attendees than ever before. We were so happy and honored to hear from our amazing guest speakers, namely Stuart Miller, our Director of Education, Dr. Jewel Amoa, our Human Rights and Equity Advisor, and Dylan Mendez, a Canadian youth speaker. Additionally, we are so proud of our Student Senate workshop leaders who did a wonderful job facilitating 6 powerful and informational workshops covering a range of topics from equity to entrepreneurship, among others. Moreover, through our student voice consultation, we were able to collect feedback from the vast majority of our attendees, which for the most part was positive and supportive of the conference theme, equitable youth leadership. We would like to recognize the work and support of everyone who made this conference possible, including the Student Senate Co-Director of Operations, the student senators and workshop leaders, the trustees, our trustee mentors, and our staff facilitators. We couldn't have done it without you. We would also like to thank all of you trustees who provided your support and feedback. We appreciated having you all there, and we hope you enjoyed the workshops that you were able to pop into, and also the opening and closing sessions. And we also want to thank staff again for helping us through the technological aspect of the conference. That was, it was really, really smooth. And I think it exceeded all expectations, and many attendees actually noted in the reflection form that the conference ran way smoother than they thought, and the fluidity was what one attendee used, that word. The fluidity of the conference was really great. So thank you to staff for helping us with that. And finally, an enormous heartfelt thank you to Julia Rayner-Beeben, Grisha Sani, and Anik Tasahi for their tireless efforts and excellent organization, which made this event a reality. They spent weeks and hours, after school, before school, working on planning this, so we really appreciate their efforts. And of course, we would like to thank all the students who participated. Ultimately, they are the ones who made this event enjoyable, and we were honored to be able to help them on their leadership journey. Finally, our last Student Senate meeting is next week on Tuesday, June 8th. We look forward to seeing all of our senators one last time, and as always, extend the invitation to trustees. Thank you so much for listening, and we welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you so much. I want to say that I really enjoyed being able to pop in to workshop. I'm sorry I couldn't stay the whole day, but certainly seeing the enthusiasm of the workshop attendees, it was infectious. It's lovely to see. And yeah, I guess it'll give you pause on how things might go next year, and how, balancing in person versus online with attendance, and maybe a hybrid sort of thing. I don't know. I guess that'll be up to you guys next year. So congratulations on that. And I'm looking at the speakers list, and I don't see any speakers at this time. Thank you very much for your update. Much appreciated. Okay, so we are now up to action items for June the 16th. The first is item 521, boundaries for Milton Southwest number 11 Public School and Milton Southwest number 12 public school report 21079. And this is submitted by General Manager Thibault, Superintendent Newton, and Director Miller. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, we would like to present tonight to you the report that you have in front of you in terms of building and responding to the rapid growth of our student population in Milton. So this boundary review is unique for a couple of reasons, and I'd like to give full credit to Manager Fred Thibault for designing a boundary review that happens before houses are even built on these properties. And so then that informs our school community quite well about where their children could be going to school. So he also advocated to do 2 boundary reviews for 2 schools simultaneously. So I think that is a very innovative approach that we haven't seen in this board before. You'll notice in front of you we have 2 schools. Milton number 11, which will be K to 8, will open as a K to 7 school with English, the English program. And Milton number 11 and 12 will open again K to 8 with an English and French immersion program. We really worked hard on looking at what a school community would be in terms of balancing the enrollments of not only these 2 schools, but the pressures we've been feeling at Viola Desmond. It opened literally 2 years ago, and it already has 18 temporary accommodations known as portables on site. Boyne, which also has 18 portables, and Anjay MacArthur. So Southwest Milton is a very popular area to move to. It's a beautiful area, and we really need to respond as a board in building these schools. We also looked deeply at looking at walk-to schools. So really tried to limit the amount of busing that would be required. So again, it creates a nice neighborhood feel. And of course, we always want to have stable long-term planning with our schools, knowing, however, Milton, because it is so vibrant, that we hope this will last until 2024, when we'll be introducing the next boundary review for Milton number 13 and 14, when Trustee Garrett's and Trustee Danelli advocate the government strongly to get those 2 happening at the same time. We also believe that the balanced enrollment bodes well in Milton for the grade 8s. So unlike some of our other schools where you have a couple of students going to one high school and the majority going to another, these 2 schools, there is a cohort that is almost equally split for grade 8, that half will go to CK and half will go to LC McGill. However, in saying that, Milton is very blessed in that it has 3 optional programs for grade 9 students. It has IB, advanced placement, and iSTEM at the 3 distinct high schools. So in that sense, we do feel that choice is open to these cohorts as well. In looking ahead, I would say that this was an amazing boundary review. It was innovative in that from the very get-go, it was virtual. And I really commend the staff, Fred, Michelle, and Mitch, who led an amazing different strategies to engage and build a sense of community. We got feedback from our parents that they felt it was a very respectful piece, and more parents could get involved because they didn't have to hurry home from work, feed the children, then get to a boundary review, and then get to another boundary review 6 months later. So they were very appreciative of the long-term accommodation plan and planning this out. As always, Superintendent Truffin was amazing in leading the dialogue and sharing the process with Trustee Gray, who added a great sense of warmth and community. People felt that they could speak their minds. And in addition, obviously the superintendents, Garrett's and Danelli, were instrumental in making their constituents feel very comfortable through the process, and lots of candor, lots of good conversation. And in the end, we feel that this is a model that we might consider or doing a hybrid moving forward, but we do feel that we have solid input from the community, and we would very much like you to support come June 16th, the option for that would see these schools open in 2022. Thank you. I would now like to turn it to either Superintendent Truffin or Manager Thibault if they would like to add any other pieces to the findings.
I will just add thank you very much, Superintendent Newton, and thank you, Trustee Garrett and Trustee Daniele, and most importantly to our Boundary Review Committee, who once again did an unbelievable job presenting options, presenting a preferred option to the trustees this evening. Thank you.
I'll just echo that, what Superintendent Truffin and Newton had mentioned. And again, I just want to thank, all those that were in attendance and supporting it and providing very key feedback in not only the boundary review process, but also the administrative process of going through the meetings and always trying to find ways to better improve the process so that we can better engage our parents. So all of that was very fruitful and helpful in advancing that process. So again, thank you. And to our parents as well.
Okay, looking to the speakers list. Seeing none at the moment, but sometimes. Oh, there we go. Trustee Garrett. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much, through you, Chair, to the public that's watching. I just want to say that Miltonians are incredible humans, and our community is so supportive, and they first put their hands up to help out with the boundary reviews, and to all of the folks that were involved with the boundary review, thank you so much. I really like the number 4 choice as well, but we'll see what the rest of our my colleagues seem to think too.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Daniele.
I can't say it any better than Trustee Garrett did. Just a huge thank, particularly to the staff that put so much work into this, and the Boundary Review Committee members. We had new faces, we had veterans, and a really fantastic process. So kudos to everyone involved.
Okay, there's no other speaker, so I just have a question, and it is about learnings through this process, because this process went from beginning to end in a remote way. And I was wondering what were the advantages of doing it this way? What were some things that were kind of doing it this way? And would you recommend parts or all of it to function this way in the future?
I can start, Chair Gomez, and I also want to thank my co-chair, also Trustee Gray, who worked with me. And I'll just say the feedback from the Boundary Review Committee, and because I've been the contact to the Boundary Review Committee, sending them reports, sending them the agendas. And when I sent them the public report just a couple of days ago, just in advance, it was on the board's website, but we always send the report ahead of time to them. Their feedback was very positive. We had a number of parents who have done boundary reviews in the past, where we gather in the library or the cafeteria, and then we've had some new parents. But the parents who have done numerous boundary reviews, they actually prefer this method of doing strictly online. It just gave them an opportunity to perhaps spend some time with their family ahead of going to a meeting, or not rushing to get home from work to go to another location. And thinking about just the high school boundary that we did in September, which included all schools in Milton, some of those commutes were a half an hour each way. So just the time spent on the road. So the feedback from the BRC was very positive. General Manager Thibault, Michelle Degard, Mitch Gundy, who really led it from the staff perspective. Maybe I can let them speak to it, but I've done a number of boundary reviews in Milton, and I can tell you that the options that are before you is no different than any other boundary review that I've done in the past. So it was very positive. I'm not saying I'm surprised, but it was really interesting to hear the very, very positive feedback from the BRC.
Okay, thank you. And there are no other speakers on the speakers list, so we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are now up to item 523, which is 2021-2022 Operating and Capital Budget Report 21086, submitted by Superintendent Nagoy. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to all trustees. The report before you is the draft budget for next year, for the year 2021-2022. It follows the budget presentation that we had at the Committee of the Whole last week, and that has been uploaded to the website. So for our public, if they want to follow along the development of our budget, all the reports to the Board of Trustees and the presentations to the Committee of the Whole have been updated on our website. Today, we're presenting you with a draft budget of 5.5 million deficit. It's a compliant budget, but a deficit budget nonetheless, within 1% of our provincial allocation. The total operating budget amounts to 816 million, and the total capital budget of 87.4 million, which have been detailed in the appendices of this report. The budget process takes into account the strategic priorities outlined in our multi-year plan, as well as the actions that are identified through the operating plan, the annual operating plan, as well as the special education plan, and looking at any risks that would impede us from achieving our strategic plan. So we look at the corporate risk profile as well. We also took into account the many comments that we've received through the budget survey. We've had about 1,800 respondents at the time that have provided suggestions that were tied to our 5 pillars within the strategic plan as well. There are a number of additions that we are proposing to the budget, which you will see if you click on the link that is embedded in the report that says 2021-2022 operating and capital budget. That will open our budget workbook, which has all the details, and it also contains about 7.6 million in proposed additions, most of those being one-time in nature, and some of them are supported through COVID partnership and priority funding, or PPFs as we call them, which are one-time funding outside of our grants for student needs, as well as board reserves that support our multi-year plan. There are 50 additional positions that are proposed in this budget, as well as some other initiatives that support mental health and well-being, additional training and professional development opportunities as well. And all those details can be found if you follow that link. The capital budget as well contains new projects, new constructions, additions, as well as school renewal, school condition improvement projects. Superintendent Gaudette will walk you through more details in terms of the breakdown of some of those budgets in the next item on the agenda. And they total, as I mentioned before, 87.4 million. In terms of additional funding for COVID supports, we did receive, and I've outlined them in the body of the report, we've received funding about 12.6 million to support additional staffing, enhanced cleaning, school operations for increased ventilation, special education, mental health, and student re-engagement. Most of that, all with the exception of student re-engagement, we can only consider for half the year, as the ministry is waiting for additional information from public health. So that does create challenges for us as we're planning for the year, as we're looking at virtual learning and the structure of those classes and supports, as well as the allocation of the additional staffing for in-person learning. The enrollment, if we look at the enrollment budget over budget, we're actually lower than where we expected to be last year. You'll notice the most change being at the elementary panel. We've seen a drastic decrease at the entry grades, the kindergarten levels. We've seen increase in homeschooling, as well as we've lost international students. Mostly those are reflected in the secondary panel. So year over year, we're still lower than where we expected to be last year this time. So we certainly hope that with the going into more a post-pandemic environment, that the increase in growth will start to normalize. There will be an increase in migration into the region, as well as immigration rates, which have been reduced in the past year. And with that, I'll turn it to you for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to look to the speakers list. Seeing no speakers yet. So I have a question, and it has to do, I read a report yesterday that said that the Financial Accountability Office has said that the funding is projected to increase, but it's not enough to cover inflation, salary, and enrollment increases. And so how are we seeing that in our budget?
Through Chair Grabens, we do see that in our budget. The increase in the grants for student needs, the main increase that we see is in the compensation benchmark, 1%, which has been negotiated and is part of our collective agreements. 80% of our expenses, operating expenses, are salary and benefits. And therefore, we did expect that the grants for student needs will increase accordingly. However, they do not keep up with all the growth, and it doesn't keep up with inflation necessarily, especially when we look at some of the costs for repairs and maintenance. Certainly on the capital side as well, we've seen a drastic increase in costs as a result of COVID, shortage in supply, products, delays, etc. And the benefits, the statutory benefits have increased. So the employer remittance for CPP and EI has increased more than what the grants for student needs account for in terms of that overall increase. So in short, you are correct. It's not fully covering all those increases in collective agreement, as well as inflation.
Okay, thank you. Another question, because I'm still no one else on the list. Another question that I have is that I have noticed in my chair's conversations with the minister that other boards have brought up transportation as a, that there's not enough budget in there. If you could speak to that with regards to our board and our consortium, that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. We do have a consortium that has been classified as highly efficient in the province, and it's looked upon as an example provincially. Even with all the efficiencies that we are creating, the route sharing that we analyze every year, this coming year, we're looking at about 1.5, 1.6 million shortfall. So our expenses are now higher than the grant. Every year we do have contractual expenses that go up. So that's part of our contract with the bus operators, and which captures inflation. However, the funding has remained status quo. Over the last 2 years, the top-up funding for being an efficient consortium has been eliminated. So that was our help to cover this gap for those consortiums that have put in place the measures, the controls, and the effort to be highly efficient. So that hasn't been recognized over the last 2 years. And as we're looking currently, we do have a pressure in the transportation budget.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there are no more speakers on the speakers list. We will see you again in 2 weeks. Okay, we are now up to 524, Facility Services School Renewal Program 2021-2022, Report 21084. And this was submitted by Executive Officer Gadet. Welcome.
Thank you and good evening through the chair to all trustees. This is, I'll say, a new report, especially at this time of year for the board. At the same time that the GSN is released, we do get our capital budget estimates. And with that, I'm hoping to seek approval this evening to gain your approval to move forward with the anticipated spending allotments that are presented in the appendix. And again, this is slightly different than how you have typically received these in the fall. And I'd be pleased to continue to report as we have in the past in the fall with specific project listing if that's so desired. But really the intent of this is to gain earlier approval so that we can support the excellent work of our team members to engage in larger project designs earlier in the process. I have found that since I've started here, we have an intensive effort, I'll say, in the fall. I have not yet experienced it, but I understand there's an intensive effort in the fall to align our projects and then get cracking at them. And what I'm finding right now, even today we had a discussion about tendering projects that at this time of year, and there's significant dollar value and significant complexity to them. And I don't think we're setting our team up for success. So my hope here is that by backing it up a little bit, it'll engage our team earlier to, I'll say, amass the resources and start to get at some of the larger projects so that we can get them out for tender earlier. So I'll say the good news is that the funding is in alignment as it has been in the past. Our school condition improvement is down a few $1 million, but certainly we've seen an offset in CVRIS and other grants that have come forward. So certainly good offsets. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions about how this is broken out. It does, I'll say, reflect historical spending here at the board. So although the categories may appear different or look different, it does respect the history of how we've been spending our capital for school condition improvement and school renewal in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this report. And I will look over to the speakers list. Seeing no speakers at this time, I guess we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are up to 525 Special Education Plan Report 21082 submitted by Superintendent Ruddock. Superintendent Ruddock, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Gerbens. To all trustees, I'm pleased to share with you the Special Education Plan for the next school year, 21-22. This plan was presented to SEAC and passed in May, although with 2 votes of non-support. 1 vote from the Learning Disabilities Association, who is seeking continuity of support for students with learning disabilities, kindergarten, right through to the completion of their schooling. And then the second group was from the Association of Bright Children, Halton, who is seeking a review of our problem-solving pathway in order to augment the nomination process for primary gifted assessments. While the changes in the plan are largely minor, I do have a few highlights I'd like to share in the plan, pending, of course, budget approval. First is the structured learning class pilot. This is a pilot for students with autism in grades 4 and 5. We will be running 3 classes, 1 in each area, and the pilot will run for 2 years. We have also introduced a new role into our system, the communicative disorder assistant, and this individual has specialized skills in implementing the goals of a speech and language pathologist, and they will be assigned to our structured learning classes to support the communication goals in that program. And the last piece I just want to highlight is the separation of responsibilities of mental health and special education services into two departments. Of course, the Student Wellbeing Department and Special Education Services. And although mental health is covered in the special education plan, they're now operated by two separate departments. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And there is a speaker on the speakers list. Trustee Shuttleworth, go right ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Superintendent Ruddock. I just have a quick question. You mentioned that the minority report, or the rationale behind LDAHH's non-support of the plan was for continuation of learning from K to 12. I know, or I don't know that we have received a minority report from them yet. I'm just wondering, from the clarification that you've given us today, if we have.
Through the chair to Trustee Shuttleworth, we have not received a minority report from LDAHH. They did speak to the reason for their vote of non-support in the May meeting. And I have had conversations with them outside of the SEAC meetings. So I do have a good understanding of their non-support, but they haven't submitted a minority report.
Follow up. Do we have a timeline as to when we would like to see that? I'm just trying to get for myself clarification as to what it is that we should be looking at to improve their view of the plan.
So they aren't required to submit a minority report, and they haven't indicated that they plan to. I certainly can follow up with the organization to see if they intend to. But at this point in time, it's not something that they have articulated.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker on the speakers list is Trustee Rocha.
Thank you. Through the chair to Superintendent Ruddock. Trustee Shuttleworth asked you about the LDAH, and you had mentioned that there were two non-supporters. Are you at liberty to share who the other one was and their reason for non-support?
Through the chair to Trustee Rocha, yes, of course. The second association was ABC, or the Association of Bright Children, Halton. And their vote for non-support was with regards to the problem-solving pathway and looking to see an increase to the nomination process for students who are candidates for a primary gifted assessment. They did present a minority report in SEAC last night. I don't believe it's been submitted to the chair at this point, but they did provide a comprehensive overview of the reasons for non-support.
Do you have a follow-up at all, Trustee Rocha? No? Okay. Trustee Collard, go right ahead.
Thank you very much for this report, Superintendent Ruddock. I know this is almost a brand new portfolio for you. So I was wondering, given that we've had in the past traditionally support from the Association for Bright Children, and that between the Learning Disabilities Association and the Association for Bright Children, they represent the vast majority of students with IEPs in our system, and that we don't have support from either association this year. I'm wondering what steps you plan to take in order to regain the support of these associations, and how perhaps we can begin to look more at the whole child and not just at a particular label, because many of these students, as you and I have discussed prior, many of these students have more than one identification, and perhaps the learning path, not the learning pathway, but the oh my goodness, the pathway that you discussed is not perhaps suited for students that have more than one exceptionality, and how we will approach this.
Thank you through the chair to Trustee Collard. So I have had the opportunity to listen and understand the concerns that were raised by both organizations. So with regards to LDAHH, we are excited to share that we're beginning a joint initiative that we've planned with school programs to support early literacy and oral language development. And in the budget, you saw that we've requested an increase to speech and language pathologists, one specifically to work on this project and build the skills of our early educators on phonological awareness and screening students who need increased supports and training our CERTs to lead this intervention in small groups. You'll also see in the budget an increase to the IRT, or the itinerant resource teacher allocation. These teachers target students with learning disabilities who need specific interventions in reading. And while we've had that this year with 5 teachers who supported our self-contained programs, with COVID, we didn't accomplish as much as we had hoped, which is one of the reasons why LDAHH withdrew their support for the plan this year. So we've increased that allocation, and we'll be broadening the supports to students with learning disabilities beyond the self-contained classes. So I think that these 2 measures that we are implementing will really respond to the continuity of support that they are seeking across our grades, as they have indicated that it's really our primary years that they feel that we have a gap in our continuity of support for students with learning disabilities. With the Association for Bright Children, Halton, they expressed concerns with the decline in primary students being identified and the viability of the program as a result. And while our philosophy in Halton is that inclusion in the regular classroom for all students is our preferred placement, I have assured ABC that the board supports self-contained gifted classes for students who need this placement. So again, COVID impacted our plans to support professional development for our staff, supporting students in the early years on how to best support bright children in primary, as well as a process to initiate, as well as training them in the process to initiate when they see that students are struggling in the regular class. So I have committed to ABC to bring the problem-solving pathway to SEAC for next year for their input and feedback on how we can improve our problem-solving pathway to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all of our learners. And it's through this problem-solving pathway that we are looking at the whole child, and this is in fact a focus of both the Student Wellbeing Department and the Special Education Services, to ensure that we are not just looking at a narrow element of a student or one side of a student, but that we are looking at the student as a whole child.
Thank you very much for that answer. That alleviates a lot of my concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are no more speakers on the speakers list, so we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Okay, the next item on the speakers list, not a speakers list, sorry, on my brain, our action items for June the 16th is we have the Operational Plan Development Report 21055 submitted by Associate Director Bogue. This was originally presented in April 21st, and it will actually be discussed after the budget is considered at the next meeting, and is in this agenda as a reminder. So unless Associate Director Bogue would like to say anything right now, we can just move to the next item.
Thanks, Chair Gerbentz. I don't have anything to say now. Happy to speak to it at our next meeting.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so the next item is number 526, Inspire Awards Policy Governance Procedure Report 21088, submitted by Trustee Rocha, Trustee Shuttleworth, Trustee Reynolds, and Vice Chair Harrison. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. So the report presented to you this evening includes an updated policy and a brand new governance procedure. Key highlights to the policy include it being renamed from a board recognition program policy to Inspire Awards policy, so that it is more reflective of its contents and it's more identifiable with. We've also ensured that the wording was updated to ensure equity and that the language is the language of inclusion. We removed the award categories to allow for more flexibility as the program evolves. And we also added ineligibility to specific directives. We didn't create it. It was, this information was available on the website, but we felt it was important to capture it in the policy. So those are the key highlights. And attached is also the governance procedure that outlines the steps that trustees take to review, approve, and present the Inspire Awards. This was originally presented as a draft format to the trustees at the last committee of the whole. Trustees were able to provide some input. And based on that, today's package includes the new proposed policy and the brand new governance procedure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm looking to the speakers list to see if there are any questions. Seeing none at this time. Thank you very much for the work that you've put into this, so you and your committee, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, so we are done our action items for the 16th of June. So now we are up to information items for this evening, and we have two. The first is number 531, Trustee Professional Development Planning Committee, Report 21085, submitted by Trustee Collard. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Trustees and senior staff from the board participated in a 4-week series on leadership in becoming anti-racist, and we learned so much more than I put in the report. We had wonderful facilitation by Lena Sharma-Seth, and she led us through some very difficult learning, uncomfortable learning, but necessary learning. And I just wanted to, I know that we will be having some trustees bringing some motions this evening with respect to various types of racism that have occurred in this country and in our own board. And I would just like to open the floor to them to be able to bring forward their motions.
Okay, thank you very much. Looking to the speakers list. Trustee Oliver, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair. And I would like to thank trustees who assisted me in drafting these motions specific to dismantling racism and other forms of discrimination. I thank them very much, including our student trustees. But first, for some context. The Board of Trustees are fully committed to the goals in our multi-year plan 2024, and specifically to the following priorities: identify and eliminate racism and discriminatory barriers in the board, implement culturally responsive instruction and anti-oppressive practices, acknowledge and respond to the disproportionate representation of student identities in all your areas of achievement. The HDSB Human Rights Equity Action and Accountability Plan, the way forward, reflects the board's commitment to creating and maintaining a safe, inclusive learning and working environments free from discrimination for students, their families, employees, and members of the public. Trustees, as you know, and for the sake of our stakeholders and community partners, the way forward outlines 4 key areas of focus, specific strategies and related actions, and very importantly, accountability measures to be undertaken throughout the duration of this plan and beyond. The way forward outlines specific actions to which the board will be held accountable by students, staff, families, and the community. And most importantly, it was developed in partnership with and for the aforementioned stakeholders. Despite our past work and the foundational knowledge that exists across the system, we acknowledge that there is much more work to be done. This certainly has been highlighted by the presentation tonight by our two students, Alexis Graham and Tyler Henry. And we realize that the work of dismantling racism cannot solely rest on the shoulders of our students and community. We also realize it cannot be done in the absence of collaboration and consultation with our students and community, especially those from traditionally marginalized and underrepresented identities. And so, whereas the Halton District School Board recognizes the systems of oppression that exist within society and educational institutions and has undertaken significant work to address racism and other forms of discrimination in our schools, workplaces, and broader society for several years. And whereas on February 19, 2021, the HDSB released an anti-racism public statement to the public to affirm its commitment to dismantling and eliminating racism and other forms of discrimination and provide details about some of our board's current actions. And whereas on May 19, 2021, Halton Region Council unanimously passed a motion regarding inclusive learning environments, which specifically references HDSB students, staff, policies, and procedures. And whereas that motion was discussed and passed at Halton Regional Council in the absence of engagement with HDSB staff or trustees, and whereas that motion includes the clause that the region of Halton offers support and advocacy to all school boards in their efforts to create safe and inclusive learning environments for students, and whereas dismantling and enabling racism and other forms of discrimination must be a process that involves listening to, learning from, and taking meaningful collaborative action with people who have lived experience. And whereas alignment of actions across organizations such as municipalities and school boards is critical to this, and whereas trustees reaffirm their individual and collective commitment to actions that dismantle and eliminate all forms of oppression and racism. Therefore, be it resolved that the chair of the Halton District School Board reach out to the chair of Halton Region to request the opportunity to deliver a presentation to Halton Regional Council about the ongoing work of the HDSB, the implementation of the way forward, and its relationship to the HDSB Multi-Year Plan 2024, the work of the Student Senate Equity Subcommittee, the Human Rights and Equity Advisory Committee, the Bullying Prevention and Intervention Strategy, among other initiatives, with the aim to inform Halton Regional Council that about the focused and deliberate initiatives aimed at dismantling racism and other forms of discrimination in all HDSB schools and workplaces, as well as the HDSB stakeholder community. And be it further resolved that the chair pursue further discussions to gain understanding of the region's offer to support, and advocate and their support and advocacy in their approach to dismantling and eliminating racism and other forms of discrimination, while reinforcing a whole community partnership approach. And be it further resolved that the chair invite Halton Regional Chair, and the chair and vice chair of the Halton Catholic District School Board to a meeting with the Board of Trustees and the director, to be led by the chair to create processes for communication and sharing of approaches and concerns that together can dismantle racism and other forms of discrimination. And be it further resolved that the director be requested to establish an HDSB Student Equity Committee for the purpose of engaging students in collaboratively identifying strategies to address concerns and identify actions to dismantle racism and other forms of discrimination in the HDSB. And I will pass it on to Trustee Amos to speak to this as well. Thank you.
I believe you missed part of the motion.
I think we were going to read that out.
Oh, okay. So I believe you missed, be it further resolved, the chair pursue further discussions to gain understanding of the region's offer of support and advocacy and their approach to dismantling and eliminating racism while reinforcing a whole community partnership approach. And be it further resolved that the board requests the director to enhance the board's internal and external communication to reach broader audiences on a regular and timely basis with the aim of keeping community members informed about all HDSB initiatives, including those aimed at dismantling systemic and other forms of discrimination in the HDSB. Thank you, Trustee Oliver, for bringing this forward. I'd also like to thank Vice Chair Al Harrison for her work on this. We believe that this motion needed to come forward. We felt that we should be working in partnership with all of our community partners at all levels of government, so that we can work together to try and eliminate all forms of oppression and racism and any other type of discrimination. We felt that it was important to find out what other areas are doing, and we also felt it was important that we need to communicate outside of our community, which means students, staff, and parents, about what we are doing, because sometimes that is what is the blockage in itself. That if people outside, such as the Halton Region Council or the mayors and the councilors, do not know what we're doing, that is a problem as well. So we wanted to try and make a broad-based motion that would help us maybe create that partnership and to communicate what we are doing throughout the region.
Okay, thank you. And are you seconding this motion then?
Yes, please.
Okay. And Vice Chair Al Harrison, I see you're on the list as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's for the next item.
Oh, for the next item. Okay, thank you. Are there any speakers to this motion?
Yes, I just submitted the form.
Oh, okay. Actually, Trustee Rocha's on there. She's just appeared. You haven't appeared yet. So we'll go with Trustee Rocha, and when you show up, you'll be there. Okay.
Thank you to both, through the chair, to both Trustee Oliver and Trustee Amos. I fully support in encouraging a partnership with the region of Halton. And I know that part of your motion mentioned to invite the chair and vice chair of the Halton Catholic District School Board. There are two other boards in our region, the French Catholic and the French Public. Is there any reason why we wouldn't want to include them in this motion as well?
May I respond? No, there's no reason we couldn't include them. We have included them in other discussions we've had. Unfortunately, because they are such a broad-based district, not just Halton, sometimes they are, they don't want to become involved as much, but I think that we should invite them as we have with our coterminous board. So that could be a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Vidyalankara, go right ahead. I don't know what, you're not showing up on my list, but
okay,
take you anyways.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly speak to the student voice and the student perspective section of the motion. So that's really the last paragraph. So to provide context, be it further resolved that the director be requested to establish an HDSB Student Equity Committee for the purpose of engaging students and collaboratively identifying strategies to address concerns and identify actions to dismantle racism and other forms of discrimination in the HDSB. So first of all, I really appreciate that we've included this idea to have some sort of centralized forum for students that are outside of the Student Senate to share their equity-related concerns and to come up with action-based recommendations together as a unified group. I did just want to state on the record that this is an idea that I've shared with Superintendent Etoff, Co-Trustee Taylor, and as many of you will remember at last week's Committee of the Whole meeting. So while I recognize that this motion has not yet been passed, if passed, I think it's important to safe and comfortable sharing their perspectives, concerns, and ideas because it would be led by their peers. I would also humbly request that it says the director in the motion, but I imagine superintendents and senior staff who are responsible for planning this committee accept recommendations from the student trustees and the student senate in the development of the committee. And these suggestions could, of course, range from recommendations for finding staff advisors that are representative of the diverse student population to the overall makeup of the committee itself. So I think it's especially important considering that this was something that's been shared before by both myself, Trustee Taylor, and as well discussed heavily by our Senate level equity subcommittee all the way at the beginning of the year. So it definitely aligns with the objectives of the Senate and of student trustees. So we are enthusiastic about this part of the motion in particular. So once again, I recognize that this motion has not yet been passed, but if passed, I really look forward to having more conversations about some of my own ideas as well as the Senate ideas and supporting the work of this idea in general. So this proposal in general. So thank you very much.
Trustee Amos, you wanted to?
Yes, I just like to thank Trustee Vigil-Ankara for speaking up. I actually meant to mention that she was part of creation of this motion, and thank you for that. And that student voice is a very important part of this motion because if we don't include student voice, we won't necessarily be able to actually address some of the concerns. So that is why it was important to be part of this motion. And I wanted to thank Trustee Vigil-Ankara for making sure that we were aware of it. And thank you for sharing that information.
Okay, Trustee Gray, go right ahead.
Thank you very much. And through the chair to Trustee Oliver, thank you for working with others to bring this motion forward tonight. Is there any reason, and maybe this is directed back to the chair, is there any reason why we couldn't waive the rules and make a decision tonight on this motion?
As this motion is germane to the topic, we are able to vote on it tonight without waiving the rules.
Thank you.
Okay, so there are no other speakers on the speakers list. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Chair Gerbens, you're muted.
Thank you very much. That passes unanimously. There's a lot of work to do in this motion, but it is very good work that needs to get done. So thank you to everybody who put that motion together and everybody who's going to participate in having it come to fruition. Okay, next item is the COVID-19 /schools update. Director Miller, go right ahead.
Hold on, Chair Gerbens, I believe we still have people bringing motions on the report.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
And I also neglected to mention that the names of the other committee members were not included on the authorship of this report, and they should have been. So Trustee Rocha, Trustee Daniele, Trustee Shuttleworth, and Trustee Gray are also members of the PD Planning Committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so Vice Chair Harrison, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. In the report from the Professional Development Planning Committee, it says, we're asked to decenter ourselves and to defer to lived experiences of those who have experienced racist oppression. And we're reminded that this work is about justice and equity. And the motion that I'd like to put on the floor for consideration relates back to the moment of silence that you called for at the beginning of the meeting. And June 2nd, 2021 is the 6th year anniversary of the release of the 94 calls to action and the executive summary. It's with profound sadness that this motion is presented tonight. And I would just like to say that I want to give my gratitude to all those who have provided background and input to this, including Indigenous staff leadership from the board. So here goes. Be it resolved that the chair be directed to write a letter on behalf of the Board of Trustees to Prime Minister Trudeau and the Premier of Ontario Ford, urging that the federal and provincial governments listen and take action to honor the requests of the First Nations and all Indigenous peoples to fulfill its obligation under the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. Specifically, the letter should include that funding be made available by the Government of Canada to undertake and fulfill the calls to action regarding missing children and burial information. That's calls number 71 through 76. That ground penetrating radar technology be made available to search the grounds of all residential schools so that all children can go home. Okay, that Indigenous peoples from the communities closest to residential schools are actively involved in all stages of the processes at every site. That the voices of Indigenous community members are centered and lead the process at all sites. And be it further resolved that this letter be shared with Nancy Rowe and Chief Stacey Laforme, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, in draft form, and that any comments they may have be incorporated prior to sending. And be it further resolved that the letter be copied to local members of Parliament, the Premier of Ontario, actually, forget that part, local members of provincial Parliament and the Ontario Public School Board Association and chairs of all Ontario Public School Boards. And I can move that motion.
Thank you. Seconded by Trustee Oliver. Okay. Are there any comments? Trustee Oliver, I see you on the speakers list. Would you like to speak to this?
Sorry, yes, through you, Chair. Thank you, Trustee Ella Harrison, for bringing this motion forward. And I offer you my assistance in writing the letter. It is, it's very important that we do so. And my heart and my sincere condolences go to all family members of these children, and may they all go home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker on the speakers list is Trustee Shuttleworth.
There you go. Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Vice Chair Harrison, thank you so much for bringing this letter forward to the board. I really do think it is an excellent and amazing first step. However, I do think there's much more that we as a board can do. As part of our multi-year strategic plan from 2020 to 24, we have committed to champion supportive and inclusive practices, as well as to promote knowledge and understanding of Indigenous perspectives and realities. In order to fulfill this commitment, we need to also turn the lens inward. We need to lead by example and have the courage to approach difficult conversations and situations. We recognize that when we know better, we can do better. So in this vein, Trustee Rocha and I will be bringing a motion to next week's Committee of the Whole to look at how we as a board can center the voices and requests of Indigenous communities in and surrounding the HDSB community. But I do really appreciate you taking the first step with this letter. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other speakers on the speakers list. I too echo our colleagues around the table. Thank you very much for bringing this motion forward. It needs to happen, and we all need to speak up. Okay, so all those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Now we are up to 532, which is COVID-19 schools update. Director Miller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Gerbents, but the floor is actually Superintendent Blackwell.
Thank you, Chair Gerbents. First of all, a couple of updates, mostly around vaccinations. We have our student vaccinations. As you know, the Halton region has opened those vaccinations up for 12 to 17-year-olds. And for students that are returning to in-person learning in the fall in our schools. We've shared information with families, which families have gotten a couple times, I believe. The Halton region website, public website, has excellent resources as well, should families have questions. I believe there were approximately, in the first 6 hours of booking, there were 15,000 students that had already booked, and that was, with success. So the website is up and running, and appointments are still available. On June 9th and June 10th, so next week, the Ministry of Ontario has coordinated that we have a pop-up clinic on Craig Kielburger Secondary School. So they will be using our parking lot. On the 12th and 13th, similar pop-up clinic will occur at Holy Trinity Secondary School in Oakville. These are community clinics. They will have the Pfizer vaccine. We met this morning with Public Health, Halton Region Public Health, and a representative from the province. It will either be run by the Red Cross or the Blue Cross. The capacity is approximately 300 doses within a day, so there will be some booking appointments as well as walk-ins. We will support some of that communication, and again, it's open to the public. Pfizer will be offered at that site. So it's basically, they bring everything, they set it up, they use our facility, and we support some of the communication. So it's a good news story. The last thing is the remote learning registration. So that has closed as of June 1st. We have tentative numbers in elementary. We have approximately 3,200 students that have chosen remote for September. A reminder that I think October 12th is the day that students will have in elementary the option to change models, which is about 24 days into the school year. So it's as soon as they come back in the fall, that information will go out to families to have that opportunity. And then our secondary school remote learning will be at virtual secondary school, as shared with trustees last week or 2 weeks ago. We are approximately at 900 students for the secondary school at this time. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Looking to the speakers list. Anybody has any questions or comments to Superintendent Blackwell? Trustee Reynolds, go right ahead.
Thank you. My question is regarding actually today's announcement by the Premier clarifying, I'm going to call it the mixed message that I heard regarding our students will not be returning to in-school this June. And I also heard that there was school boards were directed to hold outdoor graduation ceremonies. And I was just wondering if someone could perhaps clarify, the discrepancy between what we're encouraged to do and how it aligns with the health precautions of limiting gatherings currently to 5 people. And I was just wondering if there was anybody who could shed some light on what that's going to look like, because I've gotten quite a few emails of parents who are ecstatic that their graduating students are going to have something, and I guess people are going to expect that is what it's going to look like. It will all be outdoors. So perhaps this, if you don't mind giving us an update, that would be super.
I will speak to that through you, Chair Gerbents, to Trustee Reynolds. There isn't really much to update. That announcement was a total surprise to us, and it's different than the direction that we have been working under for some time. So at this point, we don't know what the implications are. Superintendent Blackwell has not yet had a conversation with public health about it. We don't know what the requirements are. So it's a challenge because we were not given a heads up about this. We have not been preparing for this because that's not the direction we were directed to do. We were directed to virtual. So, Trustee Reynolds, it's not the best answer, but it's the best answer I can give at this point. And I don't want to sound negative or critical, but clearly we also have had no written documentation of this from the ministry. So we don't know what the expectation is exactly and how we can do it. But I would say this, it's a little more complicated than what it was described today. One of our secondary schools in Oakville, for example, has over 500 graduating students. To commit to an outdoor ceremony on that is going to be a challenge given the public health conditions and so on. So the short answer is we don't know yet. And we are probably going to message something out about that, or that's going to be our message to families. We talked about it today, and I can't remember Superintendent Blackwell or Superintendent Podrebaric what we said we would do, because we expect many families who have contacted you have also contacted our principals, will be contacting us and other trustees. Terry or Scott, do you remember exactly what we said? Terry? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Superintendent Podrebaric.
Yes, to all trustees, we actually sent a communication out earlier tonight with just exactly what Ms. Director Miller said, which is we are waiting further direction from the ministry. It would be very unprecedented to act wholesale like that on a verbal announcement at a press conference. So logistically, it is concerning to us. We don't know. It's so preliminary right now. We're just trying to send a communication saying to parents, let's just wait, give us some time with that. We also said the similar thing about, just so trustees know, just about, we'll have plans in place for any sort of personal belongings of kids and that sort of thing at the end of the year as well. So we tried to touch on a number of issues that might come up, and that communication's been sent.
Okay, and just to let people know that the chairs every week have a call with the minister. We were supposed to have it on Monday, and it was deferred to today, but then we received notification this morning that it was canceled. So chairs have had no opportunity to speak with the minister on any of the issues that we have. Okay, so you don't have any other items for the school update, COVID-19 school update? That's it? Okay. So on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry, Trustee Daniele. I see you now. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know I'm having tech issues, but I know I'm here. I'm here for like the who's in Whoville. It's just in response to Superintendent Padre-Barrick, we might want to look at our communication and be a little more explicit and a little more clear, because I am looking at 2 local newspapers that have stated the board says we will communicate with families once more detailed plans have been received. And that is being taken by a number of people that we are making plans for graduation. So it's a bit of an ambiguous message. So we might want to be a little more overt in our messaging going forward, because I've had that forwarded to me by a few people already saying it says right here, the board is making plans for graduation. So we just might want to do a follow-up communication. Just
yeah, I would. Ambiguous is where we are right now. We are waiting for more information. We're not going to rush ahead and act without more information. We're trying to communicate that to our principals as well. Trustee Daniele, it is very tough. The reality is schools were planning graduations. There are virtual graduations. There's not a school on the board that was not planning to honor graduates. They were just going to be virtual celebrations. So this shift to outdoor is it's what's phasing us. There will be graduations under any banner, but I do want to highlight that graduations were being planned for all of our students.
thank you very much. I think that's important for parents to hear.
And Trustee Daniele, it's a little more complex because the announcement seems to imply that all schools will do events for all grades, not just graduating students. The story of Little Arthur is about, all kids will be able to see their classmates. So we don't know what that means. Our principals expected to do events for grade 2 to grade 3 and grade 4 to 5, and that would be unprecedented, and the amount of work and planning involved in that would be astronomical. So it's not just simply graduations that has been implied in the press conference. So we really need Ministry of Education direction on this.
Thank you.
A very caring former school chair contacted me after the press conference saying, you guys better go and check on your administrators. They're probably all fainted in their offices right now. Okay, on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, Director Miller, Director's report.
Thank you, Chair Gerbentz. I am going to start with what we believe is very good news for our secondary school students. And I will turn it over to Superintendent Hunt Gibbons, who is in her last board meeting of her career, to provide the good news. And it's always nice in your last one to provide good news. Julie?
Thank you, Director Miller. You're right. It is very refreshing and an honor to be providing some very good news to the board this evening. So as you are aware, all school boards across this province have been tasked with creating learning models and asking their populations how they would like to learn for next year. Our student trustees and all of our trustees would be aware that we are in the quadmester system currently, and it hasn't been without its challenges. Students have reported challenges in the quad system, and staff have reported challenges. Our ministry direction, however, is that we must abide by no more than 2 courses per day. So what we're going to do here in Halton is we are going to comply with the ministry as required, and students will take 2 courses per day, but they're going to do so over the course of a semester. And so what this will look like, just to provide a couple definitions for any public who are watching, is a semester is 20 weeks and a quadmester is 10 weeks. And so our 2-course model will occur over 20 weeks, a semester, rather than a 10-week quadmester. And our secondary students at the virtual school and in our brick and mortar schools will take a total of 4 courses. 1 week, they will have a schedule with period 1 in the morning and period 2 in the afternoon. The following week, their schedule will be period 3 in the morning and period 4 in the afternoon. Thus, our secondary students in person will attend a full day, and all secondary classes at virtual school and the brick and mortar schools will be 150 minutes in length. So everyone gets the required 300 instructional minutes per day as per the Ed Act. This model is in response to student and staff feedback specific to the quadmester experience that we have had this year. This model provides a better balance of course loads for students who can take 4 classes at once rather than 2, so they can balance out compulsory and elective courses. It provides a greater spiraling of the curriculum as the course lasts 20 weeks rather than 10 weeks, which means there's a potential to reduce any learning loss. So no given student would have that worst case scenario that we've heard of where you had your hardest subject, say math or physics, quad 1 in 1 year, and then you didn't have it again until quad 4 the following year. It helps with consistent learning conditions for all courses in the semester across our system regarding culminating activities and final performance tasks. And so as we've experienced this year, because of some of our challenges, some students got most of their quad in person and others had it almost fully remote. For student achievement and well-being reasons, students who have purposeful timetables, i.e. those with purposely scheduled spares, learning resource classes, etc., have the required semester model, which is the intended impact of these supports to student learning. There's a greater cushion in the event of a student absence or a COVID circumstance because the impact of the absences in a 10-week versus 20-week course are more balanced across the courses. Our senior students will be happy to hear that they will benefit from official midterm marks and all marks being submitted to OCAS and OUAC for admissions and scholarships, etc. Our staff will be happy to hear that there is more regular prep time to support their well-being. And of course, this model can easily pivot between in-person and remote should anything be thrown our way in the form of emergencies, including COVID. So at this point, if there's any questions, I see a couple clapping hands there, Trustee Amos, but if there's any questions, I would happily answer those.
Trustee Shuttleworth is on the speakers list.
Hi, I have a question, but I also need to make a motion to extend because we are running out of time. So I'm not sure, Chair Gerbentz, what we have left. So if you can give us an idea so we can judge how much time we need to extend for. And then I do have a comment / question for Superintendent Gibbons.
Okay, so Director Miller, I need to kind of know how many items you have left on your director's report. Kind of a game.
I know, or do you need to know all of them? 1, 2, 3, 4 more, but almost all of them are just information for trustees that shouldn't take very long. So I would say you don't have to extend much beyond, or I would say you don't even have to extend beyond a half hour.
Okay, and then we have to go into private session though, right?
Yeah.
And
well, private session, we've done the complicated ones, so that may be a short private as well.
Okay, so
And we have the OPSBA motion.
And the OPSBA motion. Okay. So
why don't you say 45 minutes and aim to finish earlier than that?
Okay, that's
the end point.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on that? No? Okay, all those in favor of extending for 45 minutes? We're at 11. we need 2 more. Unless Trustee Taylor has left, then we just need 1 more. Who are we
And
missing?
Madam Chair, may I ask who seconded?
Oh, I think it was Trustee Daniele. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're still missing 1 person, and
I believe Trustee Taylor left.
yeah, we've Trustee Garrett's popped on there, and so that carries unanimously. So we are extended for 45 minutes. So Trustee Shuttleworth, go ahead with your on this topic.
Awesome. I just want to, through you, Chair, to Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons, express my extreme gratitude in you trying to create these creative solutions for our students. The number of petitions that were circulated around, I'm sure all of Halton, but in particular from my area, there were led petitions, teacher-led petitions, and parent-led petitions, all to try to get away from the quadmester. So it's really nice to see that these voices were listened to and that we have come up with a solution that helps everybody to learn more effectively. So I do really appreciate the hard work that everybody put into this creative solution. So thank you.
Okay, next is Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. Through the chair, I would like to echo gratitude for this new model. I think the community will be very interested to hear about it. My question to you is, what are you going to call it? What are we going to refer to it? Like, we got to have a cool name because it's new. I think it will get people excited, and I think that sharing that it was landed on and informed by our community is really important. But I want to know what's its name. What are we going to call it?
That's a great question, Trustee Reynolds.
Could I jump in, Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons? We're drafting things now.
Okay.
We're calling it a modified semester model.
Okay.
How's that?
Modified semester it is. That works. It is 20 weeks in length, so it is officially in a semester, and we will be reporting it as such to the ministry in order to set our dates as such for MARC reporting in that. So modified does indeed work. I'm happy with that, and if it morphs into something else from what the students call it moving forward, and any of our student trustees want to take a stab at that, that would be great too.
Okay.
I like modified semester. I like that. And I'm also appreciative that we have, sorry, I know I'm not supposed to speak, but because I'm appreciative that you've thought about this and worked on changing it. I already know everyone that I know is going to be very happy, and a lot of students are going to be very happy. So thank you so much, Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons, and to the whole team.
And indeed to the whole team. This wasn't just work of myself. Superintendent Newton and a team of people who support the two of us have been very busy trying to take as much feedback and turn it into something that works for everybody.
Okay, next on the list is Trustee Collard.
Thank you so much for this report, Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons. We are so happy to have had you as a member of our senior team, and to bring this as your very last report must be somewhat gratifying because it is absolutely top shelf. And I'm just wondering, how will you be sharing how you plan to deliver this with boards across the province so that they can copy this model? Because I think this is worth sharing.
Thank you, Trustee Collard. This model is actually making headway out there. And truth be told, District Niagara started the conversation on this and is running a variation of this model. And I think we may see another one east of Toronto as well. Certainly there's definite interest in this. Superintendents across the province do get together and compare notes, and that includes the positive and the negative. So the student and the staff concerns in what happened this year. We try to learn from one another's mistakes and learn from that which has worked well. And so I do think that you will see this model growing. It has also been mentioned at the ministry meeting and was shared there so that everyone who was on the Ministry of Education call is aware as well. And Superintendent Newton and myself actually spoke with District Niagara just this morning about this very model to take from their ideas and the semester that they ran last year.
Okay, great. Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I just like to echo everybody else's excitement about this model. And it's not just students that are going to be happy. I've heard for so many parents that didn't like the quadmester model and felt that it wasn't good learning for their children. And I think that it just goes to show you that it proves that we listen to the students and the community, and that the fact that we take their feedback and the fact that you have found a solution that will fit the needs of the students and the staff, that's just amazing. And I just wanted to acknowledge this as your last board meeting, Superintendent Gibbons, and say you will be missed. And thank you for all your energy. Oh shit, sorry. Thank you for all your energy and your great ideas. And you know, you can always come back.
Thank you, Trustee Amos.
And the last speaker on the speaker list right now is Trustee Rocha.
Thank you. Trustee Reynolds asked my question, so I'm off the list.
Okay, and I'm also going to say thank you very much for bringing this model forward. It is great news, and again, thank you so much. I know this is your last meeting, and you've been such a wealth of information, and you put it in a way that is so digestible by everybody, that you know, there aren't you don't talk over people's heads or anything. People know what you're talking about, Julie, and they appreciate the work that you've done and what you're doing, what you've done for students for your entire career. So thank you so much for doing all that you've done for the Halton District School Board.
You're very welcome. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with all of you and the entire senior team. And I feel very blessed that I can make my last report to be one that is so very positive and so impactful for students and for staff. And I leave it to other people to implement, but I totally know that this is going to be a great improvement from that which we had this year. And I leave with a smile on my face, knowing that that is the case and that I'm leaving it in the capable hands of all of you on this call, because trustees and senior admin, you all do a phenomenal job on behalf of students and families in this board. And I thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. I've enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Joanna, Trustee Oliver, you popped on the list.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. Julie, Superintendent Hunt Gibbons, you know, I was privy to some conversations at the Senate, or the secondary students were discussing the quadmester system and what they liked and didn't like about it. And, you know, clearly, you know, two courses was the positive, but they all acknowledged that they were not learning. They were not as engaged. They were not able to engage as much. And they felt that the content was a bit rushed through. So I think they'll be very, very happy to hear about this change, and how wonderful that is your kind of outgoing legacy, that you're able to bring this new model to our school board and our students. So I thank you for the report, and I thank you for all the work you have done for our secondary students while that was your portfolio. You were my very first superintendent when I started in 2014, and you are my current superintendent. And I just want you to know that I've really enjoyed working with you. You've always provided very calm guidance and direction, very educational. And I have some great fond memories of us together, and especially relating to graduations at Abbey Park and Garth Webb, and navigating the two back-to-back. So that I'll never forget. And I thank you very much. Congratulations on your stellar career in education, and all the best on your new chapter of retirement and the newfound freedom. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks again. And Director Miller.
I just want to say, Chair Gerbents, I'm not sure I believe Superintendent Hunt-Tibbins when she says she enjoyed every minute of it. I'm sure there's a few minutes that weren't so enjoyable over that career. Anyway, it's great that Julie is able to have her last report to the board, a very positive one, and it's her last report. And I'm so happy to say the next report is his very first one to the board. Superintendent Barnes, and I like the ring of that, will talk about an MOU we've just done. And it's positive.
Thank you, Director Miller, and through you, Chair Gerbents. I just want to take a moment to share an update on a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, that we have set up through the Oakville Basketball Prep Academy. And this came about because in the previous years, students have been attending White Oaks Secondary School, and the academy, how it happens is the students play for the rep team outside of White Oaks, but they attend White Oaks School. So we've been registering these students to the Welcome Center the last few years. There's been about 20 students in total. And with the support of Director Miller and Superintendent Truffin, we had some conversations to put some parameters in place with this prep academy. So now that we can finalize things such as the tuition for the students and verification of documentation if they're coming from out of province. So it's exciting. It's an exciting opportunity for us. Oftentimes when I was working at the Welcome Center, parents would contact us asking us if there's any academy opportunities in our school board. And now we can tell them formally that there is an opportunity at White Oaks. And as I said, it's been working quite well, but we want to put in some parameters in place. And this agreement will be renewed each year, annually, just to ensure that it's working well. So I'll stop there if there's any questions.
Okay, looking to the speakers list. Oh, there we go. Trustee Reynolds, go right ahead.
Thank you. And that is a wonderful report through the chair. Thank you. I get very excited when we hear about partnerships and formalizing them, and I'm delighted. I'd just like to know if there is a plan moving forward for recruitment of other organizations. It sounds like this one has been in, you've been working with them, so there's some history in that, but I'm just wondering if, you have plans on what we could see in the future. I'm very excited.
Through you, Chair Trustee Reynolds. I know you're right. There was an existing relationship. Director Miller had some conversations with an organization in another sport. I'll leave that up to him if he wants to comment. But we are getting some interest, and this one works out pretty straightforward because we don't have to worry about the coaching part of it. We just benefit from the students and having the academic experience at White Oaks.
I'll, through you, Chair Gerbents, to Trustee Reynolds. I have spoken with another organization, rugby, and we're not as far down the road on that one as we were with this. This was an established one. But we're also, it's not just in the field of sports. We're looking at doing an MOU in partnership with a mentoring organization that mentors Black male students with esteemed Black leaders in the community. That should be coming to the board. It's unlikely to be at the board before the end of this year, but it'll certainly be a report of it coming forward after that. So there are other opportunities. I think trustees, philosophically, we all agree that, there's lots of resources in the community out there that can make the opportunity for our students to be so much better. And we've done a bit of that in the examples, the new facility at Craig Kielburger as an example, and we'll look at that. Those are facilities, but they're partnerships nonetheless.
Okay, thank you. There are no more speakers to this item, so Director Miller, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gerbentz. I just want to apprise, and I'm not sure if we've sent it in writing to trustees yet. If not, Associate Director Bowe will send it to you. But just for the public, and it'll go up on the website, is we have rejigged the portfolios of superintendents, given that we've got new people in some positions and so on. We have not made radical changes from what they were, because that will be up to the new director. It has been my goal as the outgoing director to try to leave in place for the new director everything pretty stable, so he can focus on schools and relationships and all that for the first bunch of months. So I just say what they are. Superintendent Barnes will be responsible for the Milton family of school, half of the Milton family of schools, and he will pick up the safety and well-being portfolio as of August 1st. Superintendent Flahat, who's coming to us on August 1st from TDSB, will pick up Superintendent Pennyfather's school and portfolio pieces as of August 1st. That's just a straight transfer. Superintendent Proto will pick up Superintendent Hunt Gibbons and Superintendent Salmini's schools, plus the library, plus NTIP, which is the new new teacher induction program as of August 1st, when she is starting. Associate Director Bowe will have safety and well-being until August 1st, and will look after Superintendent Hunt Gibbons' schools for the remainder of this school year. And finally, we are going to one program superintendent. We had two superintendents of programs. Secondary was Julie Hunt Gibbons, and elementary was Tina Salmini. We had intended on going to one at the beginning of this school year, but given the pandemic, that would have been an unmitigated disaster, quite frankly. So we quickly reversed that, but we think we're in a good spot that we could go to one program with the appropriate supports, and Superintendent Salmini will not have any schools in her family of schools. But being a program superintendent, one can make the argument that all the schools in the board are her family schools. And so I just wanted to give trustees that, and if you haven't received it in writing, Associate Director Bowe will send it out to you. The next thing is a good news story, real quick. White Oak seems to be in the news quite a bit tonight for both good and challenging situations. But it's important to note White Oaks, as I've announced before, has had a very strong debating team for many years. But their White Oaks junior debate team, a student in grade 9, Debbie Wang, and students in grade 9, Debbie Wang and Swayam Parakit, won the National Junior Debate Championship, the best debaters in the country. And it was conducted this week, and it was conducted under the auspices of the Canadian National Debate Federation. So the great tradition of debating at White Oaks, which I would love to see expanded to all our secondary schools, continues to garner national prominence because they've been successful in so many ways. And the teacher coach I'd like to acknowledge is Rachel Plume, who has taken over from Hamish Guthrie, who was a bit of an institution, but it appears Rachel's becoming one herself. So congratulations, White Oaks, and particularly those two students. And the last item I have, and I think I neglected to tell trustees or forgot or something, but last Thursday, we ran a conference in our board for racialized, Black, Indigenous, and racialized students. And the purpose of this conference was to hear from our Black, racialized, and Indigenous staff. And it was an inspiration. The purpose of it was to be inspirational to these students. I think one of the challenges we have as a board, and I think is common in Ontario, and I want to emphasize I have no data to support this. It's anecdotal, but it's anecdotal from many years of experience and speaking to other educators in the field. The workforce in education is overwhelmingly white, and we do not have a very diverse workforce relative to the populations we serve. One of the reasons I surmised, and many others have surmised, is that many students of color do not go into teaching as a profession or into education as a profession. Again, I'll emphasize, I do not have data to support that. It is really just anecdotal. So we came up with this idea in a conversation with Superintendent Barnes, and we decided to run this conference where we would have our racialized Black and racialized staff and educational leaders speak to Black and racialized students. We had about 150 students on the line, and they heard stories that were of inspiration, why they chose education, barriers they may have faced in getting education, how they enjoyed it, how they are enjoying it, and so on. So I'm going to read out 10 names. I want to thank Russia Balchi, one of our vice principals, Tammy Hardwick, our instructional program leader in Indigenous education, Alicia Gibson, a dual credit resource teacher at was MM Robinson, but now board-wide, Superintendent Barnes, Principal Michelle Lemaire at Burlington Central, Eric Kune, who you have seen here from the Welcome Center, Steve Paquette, our Indigenous Knowledge Guide and Engagement Advisor, Gurdeep Lal, Principal at Pilgrim Wood, Superintendent Sari Taha, and teacher Sahar Manzavi at Nelson, as they all told their stories on how they became educators, what they're doing, what they like about it. And I can tell you, it was quite a remarkable afternoon. And you never know the impact, but I was fortunate enough, Dr. Jewel Amoa and I were fortunate enough to speak to some students unrelated to the conference after the event. And Jewel asked one of the students, was she at the event? And I will let Dr. Jewel Amoa describe what the student said.
Thank you. Through the chair to all trustees. So the student said she was at the event and had never even considered education remotely as an option for her. Not because she didn't think she was capable, just because she was considering other things. But after hearing the range of personal stories and anecdotes about people's commitments to education and the change that can be made through education, she said it was now definitely within her radar scopes of things that she would pursue or consider pursuing anyway. I think this student was in grade 8, I believe. So plenty of time to explore her options, but education was now added to the list because of that conference.
So it was good, and it's our intention, it's my intention to recommend that it continue next year and the year after, and we'll have different speakers because we've got some dynamite leaders in this board, dynamite educators who can inspire kids, that non-white kids, to pursue it as a viable job. So anyway, I'd forgotten to tell trustees about that, or I neglected or whatever. And Jewel, do you have anything else you want to add about that, or no? Or Superintendent Barnes, because you were involved in the beginning too.
No, it was just a great event. And as you said, Director Miller, just to celebrate the accomplishments of our own educators in our board, it was great to see everyone speak and share their stories.
Jewel, or no? Okay.
And Director Miller, there's a speaker on the speakers list.
Oh, sorry.
Trustee Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, through your chair. Director Miller, thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear this. If you recall, several meetings ago, I had asked the question of, we've got these schisms and pathways, but we don't have one in education, and recognizing that not only staff, but students are saying that they want to see themselves reflected in our schools. And in fact, I heard that that very comment made by elementary school students at the Halton Youth Leadership Symposium just last Friday that our student trustees and the Senate hosted. So hearing comments like that from our own students, it left me wondering, why would we not have a pathway? It's kind of weird, given that we're in education, that we're not promoting our own sector and that career. And I remember the response from, I believe, Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons was that was not something that was, I guess, the ministry directs or mandates the pathways. So I'm curious, because I love this as a going forward kind of an event, something that absolutely should be happening. And I also heard from Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons around some summer school type activities in conjunction with our colleges and universities. But I'm wondering, how would we get the Ministry of Education to promote their own sector and the pathway to that career through, how would we create that as a schism, let's say? Over to you.
Good question. And I'm going to turn it straight over to Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons.
Thank you. So the specialist high skills majors are determined based on the industry reports on the areas and where the province in this country needs people. And so where we see shortages in various industries, we see promotion of those different areas. And thus they identify the sectors in which there is that need to put the greater emphasis and the greater funding. And while we have had education represented through child youth worker and the college programs, etc. We haven't seen it through the Faculty of Educations or anything else. That doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just means that right now there hasn't been a shortage in that area or a need to really promote and shine the light on those areas. Certainly we see it here in Halton. We see it for a very different reason, as been identified by both Director Miller and Superintendent Barnes. And so that could certainly happen down the road. It's just not current and reflected in the offerings or where the ministry is shining the light in terms of the additional opportunities right now. Right now, there are 15 sectors, 9 of which are identified, most of which are in the skilled trades in which the emphasis is being placed.
I am finished, Chair Dubens.
Okay. On to communication from the chair then. We have our letter listed there about the grade 9 math curriculum. And I was going to ask you, Director Miller, do we have the grade 9 math, de-streamed math curriculum?
Through you, Chair Dubens, is there a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? The answer is no.
Okay. That's very frustrating. And I can tell everybody that on the last call with the minister, the de-streaming of the math curriculum and the fact that boards don't have it yet was a major issue that came up. And so it's been communicated in several different ways to the minister, and there is very little understanding of why it has not dropped to boards yet. And also in the communication to the chair or from the chair, there is a letter of amplification of our letter to the minister from MPP Ted Arnott up in Halton Hills. And then there are a couple of other letters, one from Waterloo Region District School Board about the proposal for online learning, and Hamilton Wentworth District School Board about e-learning supports for special ed education. Committee reports. There is a committee report listed for accessibility. Did you want to speak to that at all, Trustee Shuttleworth?
I've just outlined, it's quite fulsome in what's in there. So if anybody's interested in looking at what we talked about, it's all in there, as well as the SEAC report.
You're welcome to. Trustee Shuttleworth sent a SEAC report to me last night about last night's meeting. Manager Gortmaker, if you could add that to the agenda package this evening so we have a good record of it, that would be awesome.
Again, the CAC just outlines, sort of gives high-level highlights of the spec ed plan and mentions the 2 minority reports that we should be receiving. And that's really sort of a high-level overview, but if you are interested in reading them, they will both be attached.
And Trustee Daniele, oh, I'm sorry. There are people on the speakers list. Trustee Reynolds, go right ahead.
Thank you. I would like to make a committee report on audit, please. I'm pleased to report that we held a special audit meeting on Tuesday, May 19th. The main purpose of our committee discussion was the scope of the internal audit. Our internal audit manager was in attendance. You guys may not, I believe that you were made aware that when we approved our last, at our, I guess, 2 meetings ago, we approved our internal audit motions. Our internal audit manager wasn't in attendance at our audit committee. So we had this opportunity to review the audits. It's important for you to know that likely the audits will be extended beyond the school year calendar because there is quite extensive work. There was definitely, we were informed that our internal audit manager will continue to connect with management to identify the work plan and a terms of reference, strategy, timeline, and assess the personnel policy and procedures needed. We'll expect to get an update at our next audit meeting, which is in September. Definitely the staff and audit committee were both in support of aligning the work of the equity and inclusion and mental health and well-being motions that we approved at our board and at the audit committee meeting. And that's everything. Thanks.
Okay, great. And the next speaker is Trustee Daniele. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. I did submit a very brief OPSBA report, Ontario Public School Board Association. I did it on May 31st after the board package. I do apologize. In essence, the report just talks about the upcoming annual general meeting on June 12th. It will be preceded by a board of directors meeting. The executive meeting was this morning. And as part of the AGM, there will be the opportunity for the Halton representative to vote on the policy resolutions as well as in any elections. And so given that, I believe I can make a motion related to this report without having to waive the rules. Am I correct in that? I see Chair Grabentz nodding. So I would like to make a motion, be it resolved that Trustee Jean Gray be appointed the voting delegate for Halton District School Board at the 2021 Ontario Public School Board Association's AGM, and that Trustee Joanna Oliver be appointed the alternate voting delegate. I so move.
Trustee Shuttleworth, would you like to second that motion?
Yes, I would.
You're on my screen. Okay, excellent. So is there any discussion at all on this? Considering we actually made this, we talked about this at committee of the whole, I'm sure there's no real discussion on this. So all those in favor? We're just missing one. It might be Oliver. Nope, she's there. Sorry. Oh, this part's hard. Well, that carries.
Madam Chair, I believe everybody is there.
Oh, okay.
As one of the.
Oh, yes, one's missing. Yes, that's fine. Yes, so that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. On to Trustee Rocha.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, through the chair. So just a quick update from the PIC committee. The last meeting of this school year was held last week, and I think there were two big takeaways. The PIC representatives spoke that they would like to continue having future PIC meetings online as it allowed for more parent participation. And the other key takeaway was that perhaps instead of hosting one annual PIC conference, that perhaps we should consider hosting events on a regular basis and offering parents different ways of engaging them. And more to come as the committee will have to decide what their next steps will be.
Okay, great. There are no more speakers on the speakers list for committee reports, so we're up to trustee questions and comments. Just noting the time here for everybody that we have just under 10 minutes to complete our meeting. Seeing no questions and comments, we'll move to public questions. Vice Chair Harrison, do we have any questions this evening of a governance nature?
Well, there you go. There you have it. Through you, Madam Chair, the question that has been entered is not necessarily of a governance nature, i.e. related to trustee policy work and so on. The question is which superintendent now has the athletic portfolio. So it is a clarification from the director's report.
Director Miller, I don't know, did you want to?
Sure, I can talk through you, Chair Bench, to Vice Chair. I guess the question, the athletic portfolio will be by the program superintendent, but it'll be her staff, right? They have staff. Currently, Superintendent Hunt Gibbons was responsible for the athletic portfolio at secondary, but we also had elementary. So now it'll all be under Superintendent Salmini, but her staff will be responsible for it. So the same staff is still in place.
Thank you. There are no more questions.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I need a motion to rise into private session. Trustee Rocha, seconded by Trustee Shuttleworth. Any discussion? Seeing none. So all those in favor of rising into private session? That carries unanimously. We are now in private session. So thank you, Kevin. And